waste any time. Smooth.
Hey man, I'll be on there. I'll be 30. I'll be less than 30.
Councilor Novak going to join us? Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the second part of a special session regarding the departments within the city organization. I am going to add one thing to the agenda. After the 5:15 speaking, community development, I'm going to insert a 5-minute bio break in there and then get back to the rest of the session. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councillor Novak. Councillor Newton.
Present.
Councillor Kopczynski.
Here.
Councillor Montague.
Here.
Councillor Smith.
Here.
Councillor McGee. Mayor Johnson II.
Here. I do want to say that Councilor McGee said that she had a prior commitment with her employer that she had to make. So just want you to know that. So I will now turn over the floor to our city manager, Peter Trotzen.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon. Thank you again for your continued attention. I know that 4 hours yesterday was a long time to sit and listen to presentations. So we'll try to make it a little bit shorter this evening, so let's get right to it. Tonight you're going to hear from finance, then library, then we'll have a 15-minute break. Parks and Recreation will be up, community development, and then per the mayor's recent directive, we'll have another break, and then we'll finish with Public Works. So first up is our finance director, Gina Yeager.
Give me 1 second, please. I just received a text that Councilor Novak is going to take the meeting from home. So she will be present. Okay. Thank you, Director.
Is this one working? Okay, it is working. Great. Okay, I will try to be quick tonight because I know, like Peter said, it's been a long time yesterday. So the finance department, we provide fiscal oversight in a transparent and ethical manner while utilizing strategic thinking in all budgetary and procurement efforts, resulting in effective and efficient business processes. It's kind of a lot of things, a lot of words to say that, we really want to take the city values of integrity and honesty, transparency, and really live those for not only city employees, but also for our constituents. So the city finance department is made up of 9 employees. There's me, the finance director, Diane Marzinski, who spoke to you in September about our procurement and how we handle that at the budget committee, is our purchasing coordinator. And then we have Inga Anderson Baggett, our payroll administrator. We have our senior accountant, and then we have several accounting specialists. We are hoping in the next budget cycle to add a grant administrator, but we'll be bringing that to you at a later date. Our core services, we handle all things financial here at the city. We handle payroll, we handle accounts payable, that's payments to outside vendors. We handle risk management. HR handles the workers' comp piece of risk management and safety piece of that. We handle everything else. So if there are any claims that come in against the city, finance is the one who handles those. We handle contracts and purchasing, as I mentioned. We've had record numbers of contracts. We've really been trying to make sure that we're in compliance with state laws and purchasing rules. And there have just been many, many procurements that have been coming up in this last couple of years. We do cash reconciliation. We handle the budgeting for the city. Of course, we work with all departments on that, but we pull everything together and we prepare the budget document. Financial reporting, the same type of a thing. We provide guidance to our departments. They give us information. We pull that all together in what's called an ACFR, which is the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. That's a new name in the last couple of years. Some of you may have heard of a CAFR. Now it's called the ACFR. We handle accounts receivable. We bill out various invoices. We have things like the fire lines that we bill out. We have assessments that we bill, and those are in accounts receivable. And then we also do munis administration. And that one has been a much bigger role in the last couple of years. We've been having a lot of problems with our ERP system, upgrades that occur that things will disappear or we'll have to re-enter information. So as I think Director Roten mentioned yesterday, Munis administration has becoming a much bigger job responsibility, not only for payroll and HR and IT, but also for all finance staff. It's a challenge that we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do with. It's a little hard. We've only had Munis around for a few years, but we're already starting to plan for its replacement.
Question about that. I know a lot of other local governments use Munis for the same purposes that we do. Are they having the same problems?
I have heard various things. Not everybody uses it the same way.
Right.
So Director Park may have more information on that. We did recently have a meeting with their VP of customer service and talked some things out with them. I don't know how much good that will actually do. We'll see if it helps.
Thank you.
Some of the accomplishments that we have had in the last few years, COVID again, I mentioned yesterday in municipal court that COVID has really helped us refine some of our processes and helped us become more efficient. One of those is we now can work electronically. We have people who can work from home. We like people to be in the office, but if somebody needs to be working remotely, they can do that. We also do all of our bidding online now, and that has become much more efficient. We have DocuSign, as Director Roten mentioned yesterday. They use that for payroll HR processes. We also use that for our contracts and our other procurement documents. We process semi-monthly payrolls for over 400 people with 2.5 FTE. Some of that can get a little complicated, especially with the problems that we've been seeing with our ExecuTime system. It can take a lot longer than we hope, but they do a fantastic job at getting people paid. We have successfully navigated through Munis and ExecuTime upgrades. A lot of the times that means that we're having to go in and mitigate issues that we find. They may do a security upgrade, and then all of a sudden we find that we don't have certain fields that still have information, and we have to go back and redo those. But again, the finance staff has done a fantastic job and HR and IT have done a very good job of navigating through that. We're still doing it. We're still navigating through that. So we have over 4,300 vendor payments each year. We do vendor payments through hard copy checks. We do wire payments. We do EFTs. We have been working on improving our compliance with city and state rules. Looks like I forgot the state in there. And then also purchasing rules. We want to make sure that we are bringing all of our processes, all of our procedures into alignment. And as we find things that haven't been that way, we're getting those corrected and making sure that we are not putting the city at risk by being out of compliance. And then we also continue to produce award-winning financial documents. Even though things have been a little difficult in the last couple of years with all of these different upgrades and the work that we've had to do with that, we still, our ACFR, our budget document, have won the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association's award each year.
So, Director, we heard a lot about cybersecurity yesterday from Director Park. Have you noticed an uptick in incursions or attempts to intrude upon our financial system?
We do get phishing emails. I'm sure that IT sees a lot more of those and stops a lot of those before they actually get to us. IT also likes to test us by sending out phishing tests, and we really try to make sure that we are catching those. I hope that means that if we get real threats, that we're also catching those. We haven't seen anything in the last couple of years that anybody has, we haven't clicked on anything that we're aware of. I mean, at this point, we haven't seen anything that's come through that hasn't been legitimate that we've worked with. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
It does make sense, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I get a clarification? Was that 2.5 full-time employees or 2 half-time employees?
It's 2.5
I was
full-time
like, do you
employees.
guys have people working 100 hours a week?
So we have Inga Anderson-Baggett, who is our payroll administrator. We have Alice Carlson, who's an accounting specialist. And then Vanessa Garcia does a lot with our risk. She backs up our AP, our cash, and she also assists with payroll as needed.
Okay, and then I also had a quick follow-up question regards to remote work. Is this something, like, what percentage of work is done remotely?
So in my department, it's very little. Actually, it's usually if somebody isn't feeling well and they feel well enough to work, but don't want to come into work because maybe they've got a cough or something like that, then they can work remotely. We have people who don't live in this town, and so maybe they have a doctor's appointment and they need to leave for that, and then they just want to log in from home for the rest of the day. And so we allow that. The vast majority of the time, employees are here in the office.
Okay. I was just wondering because I know that when we heard from Director Roten, I apologize, that was a big competitive factor with departments. So I'm curious.
We allow people to work remotely, but we definitely prefer that people are here. It's easier for us to interact with other people who take advantage of our services. If we can have face-to-face conversations, it's easier just to run down the hall and talk to somebody than it is to try to log in. And sometimes there's connection issues, but we certainly allow it. We believe that, being as flexible as we can be is important, but we still we have some people that interact with the public more than others. And for those people, it's easier if they're in the office.
Thanks.
There is a city policy that HR puts out regarding telecommuting, and it leaves a lot of discretion to department heads because you can imagine that different departments have a different capacity to allow that.
And also, we're still in the pandemic. So if somebody's sick, I don't want them around me. I can imagine what it's like when you're in a cubicle with other people. So I like the flexibility that you have.
I hope that's going to be also post-pandemic. Everyone keep their germs to themselves personally.
Oh, absolutely. I would prefer somebody not come to work sick.
Right.
And if they have the opportunity to work from home, then that's great. Yeah, we definitely allow that. So challenges that we've been facing, as I mentioned, we've had some ongoing issues with our financial software and also with our time and attendance software. I actually had somebody who left the city's employment because dealing with those challenges was becoming a bigger and bigger part of their job, and they wanted something where they didn't have to do that.
Are those 2 different softwares?
They
Or
are,
is it all part of the Munis?
ExecuTime is a Tyler product, but it's not fully integrated with Munis.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then also challenges that we faced is the loss of key employees. Some of you may remember J.C. Rowley. He left the city back in May to become the finance director down in Grants Pass. With him leaving, we lost a wealth of knowledge, especially regarding Munis. He helped build Munis from the ground up. And so there were a lot of things that he knew that, maybe didn't get passed on because he just knew them. And so trying to learn those processes and learn all of that knowledge that he had and documenting that has become bigger and bigger for us also. And then just recently, Brett Teason left and went elsewhere. We were sorry to see him leave also, especially in December. January is a very busy time of the year for us. So that hasn't helped. We did hire somebody, and she'll start March 1st, and we're very happy to have the additional help. So another challenge that we're going to have is additional need for contracting staff. Right now, Diane Merzinski handles all of the city contracting, and she is one person, and we have record numbers of procurements that are coming through. We do have assistants in other departments, but she's the one that people will contact if they need to know what kind of procurement we need to do. If you remember from her presentation in September, it's very complicated, and she's an expert at it, but we need somebody to come in and help her with some of that. And then, as I also mentioned earlier, the grant administrator, we would like to take advantage of all those federal and other monies that are sitting out there. And if we can get somebody who can write us some of those grants and get us some of that money, that would be terrific. And we could also have that person do the administration of it, which would help us greatly in finance for some of our federal schedules that we have to do. And then, as with everybody else, the costs are increasing at a greater rate than our revenues. We are seeing the same impacts of inflation, of COLAs, of just increases in contracts in materials and supplies as everybody else is. And we are, our rates aren't going up at the same level, and that's always going to be a struggle for us. Really, that's my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
The need for a grant writer is what I thought I saw you say. Is that grants for the entire city, or is that just specifically finance?
No, that would be
related
grants for the entire city. This would be a city position that could work with any of the departments that, expresses a need for that.
Okay, thank you.
It's important to note that it's the management of grants after they're written and received as well, because there's a certain accounting tail that goes with that. So in a lot of these grants, we anticipate with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, we're hoping that we'll be successful in obtaining grants to support our operations.
So do you have one position that does that now, or is that kind of just filled
No.
by whoever can do it? Or
No, and I have forwarded probably 6 or 7 months ago an article that talked about how cities, especially smaller cities, are not well positioned to take advantage of this IIJA support because it takes manpower to actually make these grants happen and then to provide the logistical tail that has to follow.
So is the person going to be, or position going to be going forward in the plan?
Go ahead.
We will present it in our budget when we move forward with the budget committee meetings, and moving forward, it will be included in there.
And
Are you asking if it's going to be a permanent position?
is it going to be split like 50% or 50% for contracting and 50% for grant administration? Or
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. These would be two separate positions. We would have a grant assistant or a contracting assistant who would be assisting Diane with contracts and other procurements. And then we would have a separate grant administrator position who would be focused solely on
grants,
grants.
grant administration. So I don't
Right.
I don't want to lose Diane because we haven't been able to support her and the work that she does for us.
I don't want to lose her either.
Follow-up question about Diane. Is she on either of the short lists for pending retirement?
Yes.
Damn.
Thought so.
Excuse my language. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, okay. So, short list. Thank you, Director. Any other questions? Counselor
you.
Kopczynski? Counselor Kopczynski? No questions? Counselor Novak? No, I guess not. So she hasn't joined yet. Okay, thank you very much, Director.
you.
Thanks, Gina. Okay, Mayor, now we'll bring Mr. Eric Eichenoy forward, our library director.
We're way ahead of schedule. Okay.
He tells me he can tell you where to get cardigans if you're looking for a cardigan.
I can, but you
I believe you.
You actually have to have a library, an MLS to get cardigans where I get cardigans. It was the key benefit of becoming a librarian was to get the cardigans. So thanks, everybody. I'm excited to talk to you. And I'd like to thank, it's always a little nerve-wracking going after finance. You never know what to expect. Usually you like to have the sword of Damocles at the end, but not in the beginning. So thank you, Gina. Okay, here we go. All right. Oh, I see. Matt gussied up my presentation a little bit. I greatly appreciate that. I'll start with our mission and vision. The vision is a connected and diverse Albany that celebrates curiosity, knowledge, and possibility. And our mission statement is the Albany Public Library is an essential resource promoting community, lifelong learning, and quality services in a safe, welcoming space. Before I go on to our next slide, I do need to give credit to our former Assistant Director, Amanda Bressler. She really put the work into the mission and vision and values that you'll read next. She started those before I arrived, and she's moved on to Oregon State University, which is a tremendous loss for the library, but it is what it is. So, all right, values. Let's see. First value, service. We jump up and serve at every opportunity to respond to the needs of our patrons in the Albany community. The library is a tremendous customer service ethic. The staff there. I've worked in libraries for a long time. I've never worked with a staff who really actually do go out of their way to greet every person that comes through that door. They go out of their way to say hi, to the point where the patrons really are the friends of many of our staff. It's wonderful. Respect. We see all people as individuals and treat staff and patrons with dignity. Diversity, we celebrate and respect the many backgrounds and cultures that make up our community and reflect them in our collections and services. Privacy, we defend your right to explore, learn, and read anonymously. That one I'll call out. That's that's pretty important to the library. We don't care what you read, and we don't think anybody else should care what you read. What you get from the library, that's your business. And we want to make sure that we're always providing a layer of protection for the patrons who borrow materials from the library. And that also comes to just being in the library. You can be there as anonymously as possible. Let's see. Access, we remove barriers in order to provide resources and services to the community widely and equitably. And then the last one, this is really, I think, the piece de resistance, fun. We take play, discovery, joy, and humor seriously. I think a great example of that we just had last Saturday. We had a puzzle race competition at the main library. It was amazing. We had 10 teams of 4. It was so well attended. People like watching it as a spectator sport. The winning team finished a 500-piece puzzle in 37 minutes, which is just like, okay. And it's also been, I think, last I checked, our Facebook post on it had over 60 comments, all positive, but that's almost like a year's worth of comments for us. So that was really exciting. Okay. So before I move on, I'm just going to take you on a little trip, go back in our Wayback Machine into February of 2021. Tom Brady had just won his 7th Super Bowl. Yuck. The number one song was Driver's License by Olivia Rodrigo. But when I gave this presentation, I was in my office. The library wasn't freely open to patrons at the time. We were still doing curbside services. which was a pretty remarkable feat for us to undertake as a staff, but it was also exhausting, and we were just awash in a sea of paper bags, and it was we made it as efficient as we possibly could, but it just wasn't the same. So a couple months later, we moved on to a reservation by appointment system, which was okay. It was a lot of work, but we weren't really providing the services that we had hoped. Then shortly after that, I'm a runner, so I'll compare this to running. Going back to appointment services was kind of like we just finished running a mile, and the next thing we decided to do was try and run a marathon. Did not go well. So we'd opened up our services more widely, not quite to pre-pandemic hours, but we tried to be as open as we possibly could. But we didn't have our staffing at the levels that we needed to, and we were still in the midst of the pandemic. So we had lots of people who'd be out at 2 weeks at a time. We had no subs to call in because they weren't really interested in working. And so that was a little bit of an overshoot on my part. So we kind of reeled back, and we redesigned the hours to work to the way they are now, which is short of what we'd like them to be, and we hope to be adding more hours in the near future. But now I'll talk a little bit more about some of the things we learned during the pandemic and some of the successes and good things that happened. I have a lot of pictures on the next slide, so I'll try and keep moving a little more quickly here. I'm going to kind of break this down by department, but when I say department, often in the library, our department is usually like one person who gets some help from somebody else. So our adult services programs, we made a lot of great strides during the pandemic to provide different types of services. One of the things that we did keep was a homebound delivery service, which is we have a couple staff members that twice weekly they are delivering books to patrons. We kind of set it up in a way that we could manage it. We know we could grow it if we had staffing. We're trying to figure out a way maybe with volunteers that we could do something. It's been really popular. I think we've, for the select group that we've been able to set up through, we've delivered well over 1,000 items to these patrons, and they're so appreciative. They're always sending the staff home with little notes and cute little cards. It's wonderful. Let's see. We also have been doing a lot of. We continue to do virtual readers advisory, which was kind of an important one. You know, when you're home, people didn't know what to read next, and so we added that as a service, and we've continued that to keep going. It's been a pretty positive experience for us. I think one of the things that we've done that's been really cool is we received a grant from the state to work with WorkSource to teach basic computing classes. And, you know, these are very small classes. We get 5 to 7 participants, but it's really a nice program. That's about the right size for a basic computer skills class. And we work with, and then we were able to offer them in Spanish as well. We worked with one of our regular subs was able to teach the classes in Spanish, so that's been great. We'll be teaching those again in February and working on the Spanish language classes again later in the year. Let's see. One service that we provide that maybe gets undersold at the library is our study rooms. We have 4 study rooms that are extremely well used and popular. So we're glad to be back open again and have people using those. We developed a reservation system, which we didn't previously have before. That's been really helpful for that. Going to start to move with a little more alacrity here, I think. Spanish services. You know, one thing that we've made as kind of a mission for the library is everything that we release to almost everything we release to the public, we'd like to have it in English and Spanish. So we send out semi-regular emails that are always duplicated in Spanish at the bottom. We often, our calendar, we try to have as much duplication of Spanish and English. It's really important to us, and we have a tremendous staff member who really kind of leads that as our Spanish services department. This is an invite to the Day of the Dead program that we did, and just a picture of that event. We were really excited. That was kind of our first really big in-person event post-pandemic that we had. And we had, I think it was about 80 people showed up for that. It turned out to be a fun program. We did a loteria, we did pot painting, we did face painting. It was really a wonderful time, and I'd like to highlight, Millie, our staff member. She worked with a lot of volunteers to get it going. She works with a lot of local organizations to get these things up and running. All right, teen services. Again, our teen services. This is a one-woman department. Christine is an amazing staff member. She kind of developed all these programs on her own. She really started to grow these pre-pandemic. Pandemic shut us down, and that really was a hit to these programs. And she's just kind of starting to get them back up and running to a more participant level. One thing I'd like to highlight about we have lots of cool things we do. We have movies, all this. But one thing she's developed a teen volunteer group that I think we've got about 20 of them now that just show up kind of almost whenever we ask to help us stuff bags for summer reading prizes. They do all sorts of just kind of anything that we ask. They do some shelving down in the children's area. It's just really a neat little community that she's kind of nurtured of young teens that just like hanging out at the library. So this picture here is a little dated. It's from an Oreo tasting contest that we had where you could judge which your favorite flavor of Oreo was. That's a teen-only program, but we are doing that again, I believe, the end of February. So, children's services. This is the big show in the library world. I joke we have two seasons in the library. There is summer reading, and there is preparing for summer reading. And April Spizak, our children's librarian, does a tremendous job of really creating different programs. She really oftentimes with summer reading, you do a lot of you bring in a lot of performers, and that was something that didn't make sense to do because this last summer, because we thought, what if we're going to have to, we don't want to pay performers to come in and then we have to cancel. So we did a lot of homegrown programs, and she had the most positive response that she's ever had in her surveys about summer reading. So I think we're ultimately going to do more homegrown sorts of programs. We have here a couple pictures. These are a couple kids who picked up their items from their summer reading prizes. I believe that might be 2 years ago. And then we also have a splashy science program that we partnered with Kalapuya Watershed Council. And we were at Bryant Park, and, these kids got to hang out with some scientists and look at slimy, gross things in the water, and they had a wonderful time, and it was really a pretty amazing event to have. Apart from that, we also we do a Read to the Dogs program, which we have dogs that come into the library. It's roughly biweekly, depending on when it's available. And then kids can sign up and read to the dogs. It's for readers who are less confident. The notion of reading to a dog, it really lowers the stress level for them. And when it's happening, I always try and make my way out of my office and walk by, because there's nothing better on earth than just glancing at a child reading to a dog. Let's see. We
Eric,
added
can I ask-
recently.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
You kept saying she, and maybe I missed who she is, but could you clarify?
For summer children's, I apologize. April Spizak is
Okay.
the children's librarian. She's also the acting assistant director currently. So
Okay, excellent. Sorry, I was like,
Yeah, I
missed
apologize.
Someone's name.
I need to. I should do that. I will do better.
Can I ask you also, I would like to share something with you.
Yeah.
The Carousel has a Carousel Cares program. And I think that the conversation may be had between you and the Carousel, because they have these really cool Carousel Cares packets that they would be great for some of these programs where they get tokens to the Carousel, and it would be help support your program.
Yeah, well, the carousel was awesome this year in that when April talked to them about donating prizes for summer reading, they donated, I think, a few $1,000s worth of tokens for summer reading. So it was wonderful, and those are like gold, and kids see those, and it's wonderful to have those. So one thing that we have upcoming is Black History Month in February. We're going to have programs on every Saturday for kids, which we're pretty excited about. I think there's a certain mayor who might be attending one of them on the last Saturday. I don't know. You might want to check that out. Let's see. Oh, this has got a little. This is about supporters. So we do all these things, and we try and do everything that we can within our budget. But our budget is tight, and so we need support. I have the Scharf Foundation listed up here. There's no way that I could possibly overstate how much the Scharf Foundation means to the library. Our entire, essentially our entire, well, not our entire, but, we get about $130,000 from them annually for our book budget. That is our book budget for the most part. I haven't even told Peter this. We just found out yesterday we got another just over $20,000 to upgrade our furniture upstairs to help make our study rooms ADA accessible. For real, not just for pretend. So the Scharf Foundation is just, without them, the library would be in a lot of trouble. The Friends of the Library, I'll make my quick pitch. March 4th, Uncorked, back in person for the first time. We're really excited to be able to do that, have that program again in person. It's a nice fundraiser. I believe the last time we did it was, less than a week before the library had to shut down. So hopefully this year will be a sign of better things to come. They also run the library bookstore, which is located in the main library, which when we were closed, that obviously was a revenue source that we were missing. We're really happy to have that up and running. And even though they're open limited hours, they are actually pretty close to selling about what they were when they were open more extended hours. So we're happy about that. They have a lot of, during the pandemic, a lot of people cleaned out their storage, or they also bought a lot of books, and then they had all these books and didn't know what to do with them. So the library, the Friends of the Library have benefited greatly from that. I also put the Albany Public Library Foundation. Their main mission has been the care and preservation of the Carnegie, and they do a wonderful job of that. But they also have contributed quite a bit to our book fund. They've helped out anytime we've asked for anything, and I'll talk about a special program that they contributed to some funds for in just a couple more slides. And I realize I missed something with the Carnegie. One of our April started a Super Saturday programs at the Carnegie because we'd been hearing that people who live downtown with families were looking for things to do, and so we said, okay, let's give it a try. And we thought we would see, we thought when the farmers market was going on that we'd have a nice turnout, and then it kind of dwindled down when the farmers market went away. Well, we've had a really great attendance for the last few weeks, with over 30 people showing up. It's a nice program. It's nice that, you know, to be able to serve the community, they can walk on a Saturday morning to the library and just do something fun for themselves. Volunteers. Again, this picture here is a picture of our new library card, our new-ish library card. We actually put out a call to local artists to redesign the library card, and this was the design we selected from Melissa Babcock-Saylor. It's a lot more fun and colorful and an enjoyable card, but I wanted to sneak it in there, and none of the volunteers really wanted to have their pictures in the slideshow. So, but volunteers, this is just since roughly July of 2021. We have about 115 volunteers. They put in they've put in over 1,600 hours, and they do a little bit of everything. I would estimate about 85 to 90% of the shelving is done by volunteers at the library. They help with book processing. We have volunteers who have been there for 10 to 15 years, and they just show up every week, and they love it. It's one of their favorite things, and it's absolutely wonderful. That was another thing we were really missing during the pandemic. Without those volunteers, it was like, the staff had to shelve books. They got tired of that pretty quickly, but it was great. We also work with some special groups. We work with the Community Transition Program through GAPS. So they bring in every Thursday, they bring in a group of students who clean the toys in the children's section. That's just something that we haven't been able to get done with our staff. So that's a really wonderful thing. And we also have a couple Easter Seals employees who are paid through Easter Seals, and they each work about 20 hours a week, and they provide, you know, a variety of help to us, which they're wonderful to have. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to pick up the pace. Okay, Makerspace. This is one of the things everybody working in the library, you get asked, do you have a makerspace? Do you have a makerspace? And we didn't. April worked with the Mid-Valley STEM CTE Hub to get the funding for this. I mean, April worked an incredible amount. They asked her to lay out about 2 years worth of plans, and she did that. And they've given us about $20,000 to establish that. My favorite part about the makerspace is that it's a really collaborative space with kids and their parents. We've got a 3D printer. We've got a variety of fun kits that they can work through. It's just wonderful. And I also really like this young person over on the side there whose shirt says, "I'm here to change the world." We appreciate that energy at the library. Let's see. Story walk. This is probably the second thing people ask for in the library. Oh, do you have any story walks? And we didn't. But this is a great partnership with Parks and Rec that really, again, our staff member, Millie Behringer, she, I think maybe got tired of getting asked about why we don't have a story walk and decided, let's try and figure out how to have a story walk. And she went to the Albany Public Library Foundation and asked for some funding, and they gave us the funding to supply that. Kim's staff did the installation, which is great. The thing that's missing there are the stories. They are at the printer. So if you're not familiar with the story walk idea, they'll be in there. There'll be a book in each little plaque. You'll walk around, there'll be a book page that you can go and read. It'll be in English and Spanish. It's a nice activity to do as a family. We're really excited to have that. At Sunrise Park. Yeah,
That's good.
yeah, it's great. So we're hoping that might lead us to more of these. All right, fine free. That was the other big thing with council's approval. We went fine free this last year. That was a really important process for us to help lower that access barrier to access that we saw with a lot of patrons. And as I told the council who was here at the time, it was really an idea where we were spending dollars to collect dimes, and it didn't make financial sense. I'll be happy to report that since April 15th when we implemented it, we've seen no change really in in the time that people are keeping books. People are still returning books, and people are still getting billed when they lose books as well. So it seems to be working well. Okay, by the numbers, this is just kind of a little picture image of the last year at the library. How many items we circulated, how many visitors to the library we had, and items added to the collection. I think we're still creeping up to pre-pandemic circulation levels, but in every area except for the children's area, which in some books were actually exceeding circulation that we had for pre-pandemic. And I think again that's probably a real strong credit to April and her collection development that she's done at the library. Okay, Lynn Library Consortium, or as my predecessor, Ed Gallagher, he liked to refer to it as a consorta, because we're not really an official consortium. But what we do is we work with LBCC and that list of other, not all the Lynn County libraries participate in it. But what it is it gives us an opportunity to share some resources, to kind of split our services. We have a shared catalog, which is a great expense that we're able to by going in together, we're able to get kind of a lower price. We also have a courier service that takes items between the libraries, which is really a tremendous partnership. We're happy with it. We'd like to maybe explore growing that in some way, but it's a little bit of a challenge, but it's wonderful, wonderful service to be able to provide to our patrons. Now I'm going to get kind of numbery, which is not my strength. But anyway, the state library always asks us to report, hours and hours worth of statistics, and then they kind of compile all of them from the different public libraries. So what I did here is just kind of like basically a cost of what a library what per capita cost of a library, and I took libraries that are nearest our size. We kind of slot right into the middle there, and we kind of do in cost that it's tough to kind of judge where, as you guys know, as council, I think Albany's a fairly unique city population-wise. We're kind of about 10,000 more than a lot of places and about 10,000 less than a lot of places. So we're kind of in this a little bit of an awkward sort of population. But these are just what we pay. I think it's just something to look at and consider. I think this next slide's a little more helpful. This is how we compare in cost staffing. The two numbers I want to highlight here are the percentage of registered borrowers in our service area. Not to toot our own horn, but if you look, 67%, we kind of blow the doors off the other libraries that we're compared to there. That's pretty impressive. And then that FTE is actually budgeted FTE. Currently, we are at, I think, 18.45 FTE. So that FTE per 1,000 registered borrowers is, I think, about 0.48 right now. As you can see, that's fairly low. The state average is right around, I think it's about 0.98.
Of course, it's 45.
So, yeah, it's, but, and these libraries are kind of the nearest, I call these peer libraries, but mostly because some of them size-wise Corvallis and Lebanon aren't really peer libraries, but they're peer libraries in our patrons' eyes. That's who they see us compared to. And let me tell you, I've heard a lot about Corvallis's library book delivery services. But as you can see, they've got a few more staff members than we have. Challenges. So I put a few words for challenges, but that list of paper there, that's actually a trivia question. That's what happens when we have the automatic return at the main library. If a book gets stuck in the automatic return in a certain spot, it just starts generating a receipt over and over again. And so that's essentially, that's what happened there. So we just have, it's only happened once in my time here. So, but as I put these small, yeah, I put this small list of challenges, but this small list of challenges feels like that big long list of receipts. So I've mentioned staffing, as all the departments have mentioned staffing. We've had a unique year, and I've worked in libraries for 28 years, public libraries 20 years, and I've never had as hard of time hiring as we've had. I think a lot of that is because the positions we were trying to hire for were lower entry-level positions, and people just found it was easier. They could find better paying positions. We're competing against a lot of those libraries on the list that back a couple spots, and they were able to pay, $1 to $2 more an hour, and that was enough to make the difference for a lot of people. We had really unique challenges. We actually, I believe, one position we filled 3 times, but we went from a person who worked 1 week to a person who quit the 2 days before they were supposed to start to another person who never actually ended up starting. That got a little demoralizing for everyone, quite frankly. But for council back in, I believe it's October, I came and we actually upped a couple of those positions to a higher level to make them hopefully more appealing. And so far it's worked. We have one new hire who started about 3 weeks ago and one who should be starting in mid-February.
What's your current timeline for the new AD?
What was that?
What's your current timeline for the new AD?
Great question.
Because April, I believe, is also.
Yeah, April's the acting. I hope to have something shortly figured out there. April's been doing a tremendous job, but she can only do 2 jobs for so long. So I would hope. I don't want to put a time, but I hope it's sooner than later. We're working on it. I want to get all the input from staff, and I've got a couple creative ideas of maybe doing some problem solving with that position. So another staffing challenge, losing both Amanda, the previous assistant director, and then also Sheena Dickerman is now at the city of Millersburg. There was about a few weeks there when I was the only admin in the library, and quite frankly, I think that probably added like a month's worth of work to Gina's department in finance. The week when Eric had to do everything in the library, no good. Let's see. But another big challenge, these are all interrelated open hours, or because we are hoping to add with these new positions. We're hoping to add more hours. We really would need to expand our Saturday hours. Our Saturday at Maine is per hour. We see more circulation and more visits per hour on Saturday than we do any other day of the week. But it's only a 4-hour day. We'd like to expand that. We'd like to expand our Thursday and Friday mornings. And I think we're going to be pretty close once we get these new hires trained and on board there. Costs, again, as all the other departments have probably talked about, we've had a lot of. Yeah.
Do you think like 90 days, or I'm just trying to think like 4 hours? My daughter's a library.
What?
We like the library in my house. I'm a big fan of third spaces.
Yeah.
Would love to see hours extended. But also would like to make sure that library staff that is existing isn't
Yeah.
don't become overloaded.
And
So
Yeah.
90 days?
I think we'll be able to add some of the hours sooner than that. The leadership team is going to meet later this week, and we're going to discuss some of that moving forward. Now that we have the new positions moving, I hope we can do more sooner than that. But your concern is my concern. I want us to be open as much as possible, but I also need to make sure my staff are taken care of and taking care of themselves and are able to work. But hopefully, hopefully less than 90 days.
My question was more about staffing levels and not directly in regards to hours. I care about
Yeah.
how the staff is and how, if they're feeling supported and not burning out, and they, but yeah.
Yeah, the burnout's a real thing that we've try and address on a regular basis. We try and take care of the employees to the best that we can. But I know I think that's also been a reason why it's been hard to hire. Is it's essentially these entry level positions are customer service positions, and customer service is not a very appealing field to work in right now. It's not necessarily something that there are other options for people that pay better than working in customer service. So I think that's one of the things that I think we've struggled with in hiring is finding that. So real quickly on costs, we've had like everything, prices of books have gone up a little bit. What we've also seen is prices of the delivery of books. They've been asking us to pay more for for delivery charges, which is frustrating. All of our contract services, all those contracts have become more expensive because they're all, we're seeing all the downstream changes of companies that have been getting paid. They're losing employees. They're having to pay employees. So, the price is being passed down to us through some of our challenges there. And real quickly, I put book challenges on here. That's honestly that could be an entire presentation. But I do think it's important for you as a council to be aware of, what you've probably seen on the news in regards to people challenging books or asking libraries to remove books from their shelves. We've had one challenge over a year ago, and it worked itself out the way that it should have. But it's a concern for us as we're always thinking about it, because we're seeing many of our neighbor libraries experience these sorts of things. And what tends to happen is you go from a library board meeting that doesn't have much on the agenda to having 30 people come to speak at a library board to criticize the librarians for selecting pornographic materials that are not pornographic and things like that. And I think it's important for you as a council to be aware of. Our process is that the library staff make the decisions. The patron then, if they disagree with the library staff's decision, they have the chance to appeal it to the library board. And then after that, their next complaint would be to you guys. So I think that's important for you just to be aware of.
Send them.
I appreciate that. I'm crossing my fingers we don't have to deal with that. So that kind of wraps up my library portion of this. Peter did ask me to just have a couple notes about the ADA, but if there are any other library questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So I think this council would be happy to deal with someone that is wanting to ban a book. Don't ever hesitate to dissuade them to come see us. Okay.
I'll take your word on that.
Thank you.
But hopefully we don't get to that point. Yeah. Okay.
I was wondering, what's something that we can do to be more supportive of our libraries?
Council.
Great question. Let's see. I think there's supporting volunteering is always a great option. We're always looking for people to fill different roles, but I also realize, you're probably pretty busy, so that might not be an option. One thing that we've engaged like our library board in is, we just finished up an annual appeal, and we got about $4,000 from that annual appeal. But one thing that we've liked to do is we ask them, the library board, to send thank you notes. And I've thought about that from a perspective of a city council. I think it would be pretty powerful if somebody who donates to the library got a thank you or a phone call from a counselor thanking them for their support. I think that's something that we found has been really meaningful to people in continuing their support. And then honestly, baked goods in the break room always go over really well too.
So I would ask that, like the other departments, when they have events going on, the fire department union has something going on, they send it to the council.
Yeah.
I would appreciate, because there's some things on here that with my schedule that I could have squeezed in, because my office is literally like a 10-minute walk from the library. If you have something, get it to all of us. That way, people can choose and set up a time to come and visit or something like that, because if we don't know, we won't show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So get it to us. Don't worry about our schedules. You worry about yours.
Okay.
We'll make it work for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so send it to us.
Yeah, and I think that's a great, another great way to show support of the library is showing up at the programs, and I can go ahead and send. I don't know, that the computer's now telling us something. Peter will take care of it. Anyway, I can. What I'll do is I'll start sending out the monthly calendar.
Send it to her.
We did it. I'll send the.
Her or Gabe, I think either one of them. Whatever she tells you to do, she'll
Yeah.
make sure we get it.
I'll make sure you guys have copies of the monthly calendar.
Do you think we should have actually the library's calendar integrated with the city's calendar? Like when people go, is it already? Like, if people
No,
go to
I know
the
that
website and they
I know
see,
the
like,
meetings
different
are,
events
the
are
board
coming
meetings,
up?
but
No, and let me also remind you too that we do put it in the Friday report too. So you do get advance notice of these events as they come up.
your Friday reports are so long. I'm messing with you. But yeah, please. Whenever something special is going on, and if it's not in the Friday report, make sure we get a copy of it.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate that.
So ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. Stacy Belcastro came and spoke to you last week. Was that just last week? About the public works right-of-way process of that. I'm over the other areas that aren't public works. So that includes all the city facilities and then also Parks and Rec, which really Kim's over that, as you know. But we have the same consultants who are working to develop the self-evaluation and transition plan. They are working on completing the visits to all city facilities. That is quite an undertaking, but I thought they're close to being done there. But the goal is to have the first draft of that self-evaluation and transition plan by June, and then have a presentation to council, much the way that Stacy did at the end of the summer. It's a lot of work. The consultants have been, they have been short-staffed as well, so that's been a challenge for us in getting this project. We're hoping to be a little further along at this point, but they just haven't had the staffing available to help. So I can answer any questions about that. That's all I've got right now.
The draft of that plan is on the website right now, isn't it?
That draft that's the public. That's
That's the public works
that's the
portion
public
only.
work.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's going to be a whole separate draft of the city parks and rec and city facilities. Yeah. So eventually they will be integrated into one, but we wanted to we want to finalize the Public Works one sooner, since they put in the work. They're much closer to being done than we are, and we don't want to hold them up unnecessarily. So yeah.
I just look forward to the next report.
You bet. I will say I won't be around for any questions afterwards. I have to run. I have a library board meeting in less than an hour, so they'll be getting the same presentation. So
while Eric is sitting here, I did want to remind you of their initiative during the pandemic with curbside delivery, and what a great service, what a great way that was to continue to provide services and promote literacy in the community. And speaking of literacy, you could be proud that Albany has the most literate dog population in the state, with all the reading to dogs. And let me again commend Eric thank him for taking on the ADA coordinator role.
Thank you. Thank you, Director.
all right, thanks everyone.
Mayor, I believe we have a 15-minute break.
Let's go ahead and do the 15-minute break. I will see you back here at 4:20. Thank you. We'll resume the meeting now at 4:20 p.m. Next on tonight's agenda is Parks and Recreation, Director Kim Ladane.
And Mr. Mayor, before we start off every department head meeting with a lesson from Kim Ladane in American Sign Language.
Okay.
So the word for the evening.
Thank you in advance for all your support and help. So learning, once again, YouTube, LifePrint, excellent. So thank you very, very much for the opportunity to come and speak with you all today. I'm very proud of our department. I'm the lucky gal who's been our director for 3.5 years. They're COVID years, so they're a little funky, but you know what? We're still going for it. So our mission, we promote healthy living through recreational experiences and serve as stewards of Albany's public parks and facilities. So a little bit more about us and what we do. Our department has essentially 3 divisions: parks, recreation, and building maintenance. So I'll start off. We are lucky enough to have 32 parks in our community, over 850 acres of natural protected space, 25 playgrounds, 22 sports courts, 12 fields, 5 trail systems, a dog park, and it's not on here, but also 3 boat launches. So to take care of all of this, we have 9 very hardworking salaried staff members on the parks side. It's actually astounding to me to think that much work gets done by that amount of folks. We also have temporary staff that help out with seasonal positions, doing ball field prep, some custodial work, landscaping, and then we also use contractors to help with mowing services. Recreation. Our recreation, I hope you all know, we do major events really well here. I'll talk a little bit more about it later. This year we've had over 400 programs. We operate several facilities. Our Riverfront Community Center, which is formerly the Albany Senior Center. Swanson, which is at Cool Pool, has a multi-purpose space. Maple Lawn, which houses the preschool, but also during non-school year times, it houses camps. The Albany Community Pool, which is actually a GAPS building, but we manage it on their behalf and have for the last, almost 20 years. Cool Pool, our outdoor facility, and then we operate the Waverly paddle boats. To do all of this, our recreation team consists of 12 full-time people. This also includes front desk support, custodial support, resource development, and quite a small handful of programmers. Outside of this group, we also employ lifeguards, water fitness instructors, water safety instructors, camp and event staff. Our programs, we used to be over 500, but due to COVID and budget cuts, unfortunately, we've had to make some program eliminations as well as staffing changes. And as a result, we're not able to provide quite as many as we did in the past. We're still over what a community of our size does traditionally. But with that said, our community has pretty high expectations because they've been getting such great service for so long. So it never feels good when we have to dial anything back. So what we do citywide, this is our building maintenance plus area. So building maintenance, we have a team of 3. It's a team of 2 currently as one person relocated to the Midwest. Well, Tennessee. I don't know if that counts as the Midwest. Southeast. There you go. Thank you. Thanks, Tennessee. And so we have a crew of 2 that are taking care of all the building maintenance. So this is at our fire stations. It's anytime, landscaping out here in front of City Hall, a light fixture breaks out here. They're working on all of those things. And they also coordinate with contractors for larger projects. We take care of city reception services. If you call the main line, you're going to get Linda or Melissa. They're lovely voices on the other line, helping to direct phone calls, answer various interesting questions, and provide assistance. We also take care of permitting for streets, closures, vendors, OLCC. So we're kind of we're the reception for the city. Urban forestry. So there are over 13,000 street trees. There are 355 more going in this year, both for city use and that we partner and purchase and plant on behalf of developers. Our team is responsible for watering 904 of these this year. So if you think about that, it's pretty impressive to think that we are responsible not only for maintenance when things go wrong, but ensuring their health, and then also keeping the new trees alive. So if you see those water bags out there, we hire seasonal staff to come on out and actually keep those babies alive. Transient cleanups. We work quite a bit with APD and our work crew. It's time-consuming, expensive, and not a very attractive. It's it's hard work. And it takes up more and more time and more resources as we move forward every year. And then what I like to call no woman's land. Not sure who to call? Call Parks and Recreation. You have a nutria that's causing an issue in one of your parks? Rick has a nutria guy. A beaver is backing up. There's a beaver dam in a creek, and it's backing up water into your backyard. Not necessarily one of our issues, but we take it on. The Welcome to Albany signs, that beautification effort was done in-house. And I think they did a very lovely job. Matt designed it, and Francisco and team put it together. Public art, if somebody calls and has a complaint about trash on an ODOT strip, typically we'll get a call. And while it might not be the top thing on our list, we'll add it in just because we know beautification and community pride is something that's important, and we try to fit it in as we see fit. Our organizational chart. Those lines with the dashes toward the end with Maple Lawn and Mary, who's our Park Services officer, that means it's not totally funded through us. Maple Lawn was one of the cuts we had to make 3 years ago, and we were able to work with GAPS to have a 3-year transition plan where we supervise the program, but they actually fund it. We are coming to the end of that 3-year transition plan at this point, and at some point we'll come back and let you know. And then, as the chief mentioned yesterday, we actually help partially fund Mary's position. It's a 50-50 split. So I hate to start a little bit with a downer, but I feel like this kind of provides some background as to what our department, where we are. We've been doing more with less for quite a bit. Since 2008, we're down about 25% of our staff. Our department's budget has been at a bit of a crisis since then. Our staff are our most important resource, but they're also the most expensive. So despite our best efforts, at some point, we have to lose staff. So we've taken a couple different strategies. For a while, we weren't backfilling. So an example is Rob Romancier, who is a program manager out at the aquatics facility, over aquatics. When he retired, we didn't backfill that position. Those job duties didn't go away. Instead, they got absorbed by a couple people. Other opportunities, like Ellie Munson's position at what used to be the senior center. It was closed for 2 years. She retired during that time period. We kept it vacant for a while. And when we brought it back, we looked at it to see, okay, with our new nimble, how can we be more nimble with this position? So it's been modified. 2018 and 2020 were rough. Due to layoffs and furloughs, we actually eliminated almost $500,000 in FTE in order to help our budget move forward. So yes, while COVID exacerbated the situation, we were kind of the canary in the coal mine. We weren't going to be able to stay the same moving forward just to budget concerns. As once again, you're hearing it a lot. Materials and costs are rising, staffing costs are rising, and there's only so much that we're able to go out to our community for, in charged revenue. For furloughs, at one point we had almost 50% of our staff across the board having some sort of furlough. For some of our staff, that was full-time. Some it was half-time. For folks like myself, that I was lucky enough just to have a couple of days. But I just want you guys to know that our staff has done whatever we can to make sure that we're being responsible with funds that we receive. And once again, expectations haven't changed from our community. In fact, in a lot of respects, they're higher. And our staff are doing whatever they can to be as effective and efficient. So our strengths, I cannot sing these enough. We are a resilient crew. I am lucky that I came on board to a resilient crew. They're committed, they're creative, and they want to serve. They've gone through a lot, but we're creative and scrappy, and we take a lot of pride in that. Community events. We are the gold standard for events if you look around for Parks and Recreation, and even outside of Parks and Recreation. I don't think folks realize how lucky we are to have a free community concert series that brings 8,000 to 15,000 people to our park every Thursday. Our events, River Rhythms, Summer Sounds, Northwest Art and Air, have won over 40 awards in the last 10 years. Sponsorships. Most communities are about $1.50 per capita with what they raise. We're $8.50. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because of relationships and quality products. Our community supports these events as they're tied to our identity and quality of life. Economic impact comes from these events, and so we're very thankful that folks are willing to step up. For our programs, Meals on Wheels continued at the center even during the pandemic when we were closed. TaxAid's an incredibly helpful program. Our trips and tours, Tripsters are loyal and they want to travel. That program was down quite a while due to COVID, and they came back excited and with friends. Our youth programs, it's grown in the last few years. People are seeing the quality and value of our programs through STEM Saturdays, dance. Aquatics, our water safety awareness program, which is totally foundation funded, sends all 3rd and 4th graders through a 2-week program to teach them water safety. That's incredible. 2 weeks, a lot of communities, if you're lucky, you get 1 week. We get 2, and they get to do it back to back. They used to get to do it for 3 years in a row, but GAPS has changed their program structure a little bit. Needless to say, 1,400 kids are having educational, life-saving programs coming through. Classes, sold out Fuse glass classes to calligraphy, Zumba to financial planning. We try to provide a little bit of everything so that somebody is able to find their home and a way to share their passion with somebody else in our department. And partnerships through GAPS, Meals on Wheel, Oregon Council Western Government. Oh, thank you. Linton Benton Community College. We work very hard to play well with others. We know we can't do it alone, and we know they can't do it either. In order for our community to be healthy and vibrant, we need all of us to do what we do well and to be able to play nicely. Making the most of our funds. So I had a handout that I passed. Matt made this, he took our information and he made it beautiful. We are so incredibly thankful for the city services fee, and I can't say that enough, as without it, we would be in a much different position. It's helping us keep our head above water a little bit longer. So with the $1.78 that our department receives out of the $9, we made a pretty conscious effort to not bring back staff that we had laid off, because I knew in 2 years' time I would probably be having those conversations again, and I did not want to do that. And instead, we've focused on infrastructure improvements. So if you can see on here, it's small things like repairing the Bryant Park horseshoe pits. That was not something that rose to the top of the category, but when we have a little bit of money around, we're able to take care of it. We restored the 5th River Rhythms concert last year. New playground equipment from Henderson Park. They're replacing the 2005 original furniture at Cool Pool. It has had a good life. So this season, you're going to see new pool deck furniture out there. New coat of paint. We've been able to complete 9 out of 15 projects despite some supply delays as well as staffing issues. So I'm incredibly proud of this, and you'll continue to see this get updated for as long as the city's services fee continues to be collected. Some successes. So Burkhart Park. We had a good year last year and some wins. Burkhart Park is in one of our low moderate income areas. The last improvement to the park prior to this fitness court went in 2004 when a 50-year-old playground was updated thanks to the Rotary Club of Albany. Since 2004, no significant improvements had been made to the park. So using some grant funding, we were able to bring this amenity. It was identified on the master plan long ago. It opened in October, and I received a call from a gentleman. And typically, a lot of times when I get calls, they're not for the best reason. So I kind of steady myself. He was like, I am a 74-year-old gentleman, and I want you to know this is the best thing to come to Albany. He was like, how do I get one at my park? And he's traveling in from North Albany to Burkhart Park in order to work out. And so I think that's a real testament to what our amenities provide. Henderson Park, so in the Monteith District, it's been on the master plan for replacement since 2006. Once again, 50-year plus equipment. The city services fee has given us some breathing room. We were able to come in and redo the park. So our vintage equipment is no longer there, to some folks' dismay. But we have this beautiful new area set up that, a kiddo who utilizes a wheelchair might be able to go and have a good time. This is what we hope to do with more of our parks as we replace items. We're going to do a ribbon cutting in the late spring, early summer, as we still have punch list items that we need to take care of. So I'll be looking forward to inviting you all to that. And then this one, it's huge, a major change. And one that has not gone easily, and it's come with some strife, but I stand by it as the best thing that we can do to continue to serve our community. So we renamed and reopened after COVID the Albany Senior Center to the Riverfront Community Center, as we have limited resources, and we need to serve as many people as we possibly can in ways that are financially viable. So we repurpose spaces to give them more flexibility. I have examples in case anybody's curious. You can come and chat with me as I've got breakdown as to how many people use this room prior to closure, as well as how many people uses it now, and how many more thousands of dollars we've been able to generate. You can still play cards in the lobby. We still love our seniors. You can still come and, learn calligraphy. There's still free movie matinees. Quilters are still there. So we definitely want to reiterate, we did not take the heart away. The programs are still there. They just look a little bit different. And you've got some additional people in there. In fact, last week we had a Dungeons and Dragons group in there that had 3 16-year-olds, which, if you know teenagers, that's a big deal. So we're very proud that we have teenagers, littles, and adults all in the same facility, because without the RCC, that's our major asset. We wouldn't be able to do what we do otherwise. Rose Lacey has done a tremendous amount of work down there and has had a lot of communication with patrons. And so I just want to thank you all for being supportive and brave as we move forward and retooled one of our resources. So our weaknesses. Limited staffing, as you've heard me talk about it a little bit more. Aging infrastructure. So Parks and Rec in the 70s, it was the heyday. All of these parks, all of these facilities were put in, and they were seen as social services, and so they received money freely, and not necessarily with replacement plans in line, and not necessarily realizing that when budgets got tight, Parks and Recreation was, across this nation, one of the first departments to take a hit. And so we've had to change. We've had to start to run as a business model as opposed to totally social services. And that's hard for a lot of folks. It's hard for folks who got into the line of service wanting to give. To have to turn it into a business model is sometimes really difficult. And it's also difficult for our patrons. But along the way, we just have aging infrastructure that we need to reinvest in. We have at least a $6 million deferred maintenance situation at this point, and that grows annually by at least $250,000. That was $250,000 2019, so as you can imagine with inflation these days, how much that probably looks like. For some of our things, we have valued engineer along the way to save some dollars, which saved us a couple dollars in the beginning, but now, larger repairs that could have been less costly are, they're more than they should be, and it's going to start popping up here and there. ADA, we have plenty that we need to do in regards to ADA, as most of our infrastructure was put in prior to 1990. And so we know that we need to more equitably serve all of our community. It's just a matter of finding the money and trying to figure out how to do it. Inadequate operational funding. The next budget cycle, we're like I said, we are very thankful for the city services fee. We have been saving our pennies. We have been very scrappy. So we're feeling like we're on a little bit semi-stable ground, but it's like one-time dollar stable fund. We know the next budget cycle, we could be back to potentially talking about reducing hours or eliminating a facility. When I first came on, one of the first things that I was charged to do was figure out if we got rid of Albany Community Pool, because that's what the budget situation looks like. And that is heartbreaking to me and something I do not want to think about, and that we will fight not to do. But that's what our budget situation is in our department. We are one budget cycle away from potentially having to modify one of our major facilities. And then post-COVID expectations and changes. Things have gone back to normal. But folks expected things to switch back automatically, but didn't necessarily realize that we'd had to power down. During COVID, we had to lay off over 100 part-time staff, our lifeguards, water fitness instructors, camp helpers. And those folks don't necessarily immediately come back because life has taken them in different directions. So I am very thankful for Rick, as he has been, this is something that he gets to chat with a lot of folks about in regards to park maintenance and picking up garbage and whatnot. We're doing everything that we can to continue to serve. We're just, like everybody else, getting back on our feet. Opportunities. Grants. Yes.
So are you starting to see some of those volunteers kind of migrate back to the park, or is it still significantly lower than pre-COVID issues numbers?
Volunteer-wise for Adopt a Park, I think we're about the same, which is great. As far as like paid seasonal staff, we're far below. We are, I'll chat about it a little bit more. It's hard to, as Eric was mentioning before, we need somebody to come in and clean restrooms. It's very hard to pay somebody $16 an hour and have them clean up restrooms, which are, it's not a glamorous task to begin with, but in the current state of things, it's even worse when somebody can be making more money than that doing other opportunities. So we've been operating at a loss with seasonals for a while.
Are some of those services that we can contract out?
Some of them are. For example, when we couldn't open up restrooms, we had the porta potties out there because it was cheaper for us to pay somebody to come in and service the porta potties than it is for us to provide staff. So we have looked to contract out some of it to keep a service level up. But I feel like a broken record. Everybody's kind of having the same situation. So we can't always guarantee that when we contract with somebody that they're going to have the same number of staff as we hope they would.
Okay, thank you.
Fingers crossed things will get better. Grants. So since 2020, we have received over $500,000 in grants and scholarship funds to help provide programs and make infrastructure improvements. And in fact, in the next few weeks, I'll be bringing back another $70,000 to get appropriated for our water safety awareness program and our Cool Pool Press program. Once again, thanks to the Scharf Foundation. So if you see any grants, let us know. We're not afraid to apply for them. As Gina mentioned, Director Yeager mentioned earlier, it does take a lot of work to apply and manage them. But at this point, that is one of our great hopes moving forward, is these are pools of money that'll help us move projects forward faster. The Albany Waterfront Project, I know you're going to hear about it and more about it in a minute. It's been a long time coming, and we are so thankful to be in the mix. We're getting over $1 million in upgrades to the park, either through the stage, splash pad, or new playground that we would have never been able to comprehend before. So we know it's going to be a little bit of a tricky year with continuing to run the RCC with construction going all the way around, but we know that there's good coming out of it. Partnerships, continuing to find ways to work with our community members. Many parks and recreation departments are finding themselves going out for levies or bonds to help keep up with rising costs. We are not alone in the situation that we are going through. It is a theme throughout. And then cost recovery, something you're going to hear me chat about as we continue to price programs and services accordingly so that subsidy goes towards programs that have the most community good. Once again, cost recovery is not something that people who got into recreation 30 years ago ever thought that they would have to talk about. But as we have to operate more and more as a business, it's pretty essential. SDCs, the methodology was updated in the summer, and I'm going to bring back a rate-setting conversation probably sometime in the spring. The rates have not changed since 2002, so that's something that we need to look at. And then our volunteer program, Jill Van Buren and Chuck have done amazing things with Adopt a Park, and we hope that we're able to continue to find ways to support them. It takes a lot of work on staff side in order to support a volunteer program, so we're trying to figure out how to maximize that. Our threats, aging infrastructure. I think this probably, the photo is a great example. This is our skate park. This was back at the beginning of the summer. Fun fact, in order for our skate park to be just have cracks resealed and not totally refurbished is about $600,000. To have it get a decent makeover, it's about $1 million. So that's one example of aging infrastructure that if you look at it, you think, oh, it'll last, 20 more years. We need to start planning for that and budgeting. If not, we won't necessarily have resources like this. System development charges, I've already chatted about a little bit there, as we're not necessarily able to pay for the growth and make sure that new parts of town have the same amenities as our current existing ones. ADA, already chatted about that. Seasonal staffing operations. So our summer staff outside of aquatics has sharply dropped over the last few years, and we've done the work that we can, but we're having a hard time finding the folks who sometimes want to do this work. So as an example, instead of having seasonals go out and help, we had a nincompoop, I'm going to use that word, at the skate park decide that they thought it was a fun use of their time to put debris in there so that way people couldn't skate. This didn't happen once, it happened multiple times. And it made our community frustrated. We saw on Facebook people saying, why aren't you taking care of this? Well, with 9 staff to take care of 850 plus acres and 32 parks and graffiti and trash and all that stuff, it takes a little bit of time to get out there. So 2 of our highly trained staff members who could be doing irrigation work or arborist work are out there blowing debris out of the skate park because we don't have anybody else to do it. And we know that we need to keep people safe and happy. So sometimes it's the loudest thing that we hear takes the precedent, but as a result, we don't necessarily get to fully use people to their full extent because they're having to take care of nuisance issues. And that's, camps, graffiti, trash, all the not glamorous things that we deal with. And then staff burnout. And this is the one that I'm generally the most concerned about, is that, once again, we're down over 25% since 2018. We've eliminated 3 supervisor positions. So now supervising the whole department, it's myself, Rose, and Rick, who are our 2 managers. All of the staff who are down there, they're not necessarily doing one job, they're doing 1.5 or more than that, because they've had to absorb work from folks who have been eliminated. So I'm trying to make sure that we can infuse a little bit of humor and optimism in our department. And they, like I said, they are just absolutely wonderful and fantastic, but there's only so long that people can continue to work at that pace. And so that is something that I'm worried about, that as we move forward, we have to worry about staff burnout. Concerns for the future. This is just kind of my overview, that we're not necessarily, without sustained funding, we won't be able to keep up with growth. We'll have facility reductions or closures. As we've seen in the past, we've already had to eliminate programs and events. Maple Lawn Preschool is one. Our adult sports program has gone away. Concerts, for a while, we had to reduce one of the River Rhythms concerts. And just a general drop in service. The last budget cycle, we were looking at dropping irrigation from non-essential parks, taking out the plantings that Francisco does that are in the median that are beautiful and provide a lot of pride to our community. Closing restrooms, trash not being picked up as quickly. These are things that we don't necessarily want to do. It's just a matter of trying to figure out what the priorities are. And when money is the limiting factor, we look for guidance on that. But I don't want to end on a negative note. So how to get involved? Stop by our facilities. We would love to see you. Love to see you. It means a lot for our staff to know that the people who are in charge of our city and us as staff know about what we do and care. Attend our events and programs. Volunteer. Like us on social media and share. We try very hard to get our message out there, but you all have connections and people that you know who might like to quilt, or might like, youth swim lessons, or might want to come help at a park cleanup event. So if you're able to share our information that way, that's huge. And then I would like to invite you all. This is going to be the first time doing it, and we'll let Allison know so it can be appropriately posted for public meeting. But we would like to invite you to come on a tour with us. I can't guarantee the trolley. Fun fact, we also manage the trolley. I know, it's pretty fun. And so I'm going to send out an email to you all a little bit later to ask about 2 dates that will take you around to the good, bad, and everything in between. So you can kind of see a little bit more about our department, ask good questions, and hopefully get a little bit more familiar with the things that at least make me very proud to live here in Albany. So that is all I have. Can I answer any questions?
I have one comment and one question. I think you might know about this. My daughter has been collecting a leaf from every park at Albany, and her bedroom is forest themed. She loves hiking. But she's almost done with her collection. I'm going to send you guys a picture when she's done. But the second thing is, I'm hearing a lot of concern about budget shortfalls. I'm curious, do you have like a number in your head of what it would be to kind of shore up and make our parks and just everything that this department touches, like seriously, it's a lot, what that number would be?
It's premature to speculate on that. It's
I'm just-
the point about it is that if you're familiar with the structural imbalances in the way our revenue works, it almost guarantees that there will be a shortfall. And then when you throw 8.5% inflation in there, it pretty much guarantees it. And Parks, as a department, as a program, has, as you might have heard earlier, been steadily eroded over time.
Mm-hmm.
So our master plan, I believe you have a copy of it. There's over $50 million worth of improvements that the community had outlined. We know that is not, there's always going to be need and there's always going to be limited resources. So we are eager to chat with you all and to figure out how we can continue to remain on shore footing moving forward, but we know that it's kind of a moving target.
Good.
How much do you think you would benefit from having the grant writer position filled?
Oh, we will definitely reach out to Gina to see if we can use those services. We have folks on the Parks and Recreation Foundation who have expressed interest. That's our 501c3 Friends organization, and potentially writing grants. Our staff, we all take a hand at it as it sees fit. So yes, that is something that we are going to ask them about. And kudos to Seth as he reached out to a grant writer and got an additional $70,000 for the waterfront project to go towards the splash pad and playground. Once again, that's $70,000 more. That'll make that even better facility. So yes, if you know of any, let us know.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Yes.
This is a very small thing, but when the disc golf things were set up in Deerfield Park, there was talk about leaving them for a while and maybe taking them out. Are they going to stay there? There's this guy that I see every other day out there playing disc golf by himself in the morning mist, and it's heartwarming to me to see that going on. And so if somebody is using them, maybe just the one guy. I have seen 4 at a time, but that's rare.
So the hope is that that temporary course will remain out there. It went away a little bit during the soggier season as we wanted to also check in to see if we got any negative feedback from the community. We didn't get any negative feedback, so that's going to continue to remain out there. And the hope is for Deerfield to be, it's on the master plan and our CIP list for 2025, and official disc golf course is something that is potentially in the mix.
It's a wonderful neighborhood asset.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Director, I see these beautiful parks, notwithstanding the challenges that you're facing. In comparison to other communities that we have here in the valley that have parks, how do we compare as far as size, scale, amenities, costs, and things like that? Are we right in the middle, or?
Sure. So we per capita wise, we're in good shape. We're meeting our essential needs. But with kind of how the community grew, a lot of it is centrally located. And so as we are growing and expanding, South Albany area, the whole East Albany section, North Albany to some respects, doesn't have the same, you got to get up in your car and go a lot further in order to get to a park or a pool or, amenity. Otherwise, we're about in the middle. Our FTE is shy of what the average is in order to take care of them. But Dave Clark was he was a big name in recreation. I mean, he was the chair of National Recreation and Park Association. And so he's Dave Clark Path. He was here. Albany grew a lot due towards his vision and his passion. So we were lucky to have somebody looking out and grabbing assets for us during that time. Now it's my job to figure out how to take care of them and make sure that they stay.
Councilor Novak, do you have anything?
Thank you. No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to say that as the city's biggest cheerleader and biggest salesperson, I think the parks are tremendous, and other mayors compliment the City of Albany and the work that your team does. And I can't tell you how it is a joy to me to watch people walk to our concerts and talk about how great the concerts are and how great our events are. And you, Len, your staff has been wonderful, and I'm glad we did the city services fee. That's one of the reasons why I voted to support it. But anything that we can do, please let us know.
Will do.
And if you need us to help clean up trash, just use your phone. Okay.
You might regret saying that. So,
Well, I do Giving a Hoot, so I do the Giving a Hoot thing with Bobby Williams and Crystal Dufer. So,
and that's an amazing partnership program that Chris and I have met to chat with them to figure out how we can support. Those are the types of folks that are out there making a difference in our community, and they're helping to make our lives a little bit easier as well. So very thankful.
thank you, Director.
Thank you. Sorry for going over.
Okay, Mayor, next up we'll have Community Development and Matthew Rutgers. And just a word about the city services fee. I think Kim mentioned that the support that they've got out of it. But she also mentioned, and you may have missed it, is it to the tune of about $1.78 out of 9. So all the city really benefits from that city services fee. Parks gets that proportion of it, or has in the last biennium.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Councilors. So I'm Matthew Rectors. I'm the Community Development Director. Before I get started tonight, I just wanted to recognize some of the leadership within the Community Development Department. David Martineau, who I don't believe has joined us tonight, but Jonathan Balkema, our building official, who's sitting back there, and Ann Catlin, our Comprehensive Planning Manager, and then Seth Sherry, our Economic Development Manager, who you probably are familiar with. So who are we? Community development consists of the building division, the planning division, and economic development. So the community development department has relationship or ties to the strategic plan. We have 20 staff working in 3 divisions towards multiple goals in the 4 themes of our strategic plan: great neighborhoods, safe city, a healthy economy, and effective government. Our FY 21-23 budget for building division was $6.1 million, about 10 FTE in the building division. For the planning division, which has 2 different sections, a current planning section and long range or comprehensive planning, has approximately 8 FTE. And then economic development has 2 FTE. With that, staying on economic development, I'm going to have Seth Sherry come up and talk a little bit about his program, or that program.
You don't want to stay, Peter?
I'm going to be right behind.
Okay, very good. Looking over my shoulder as always. Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. Seth Sherry here, Economic Development Manager, as Matthew noted. Just while we're doing introductions, most of you have met Sophie Dykast as well. We're a pretty nimble team, really 2 people with some limited admin support. What we do is leverage the heck out of anyone who will listen to us. And I think as Matthew chats and Director Bailey coming up soon and others, we use our work really goes cross-departmental. We lean heavily on the finance team as well and others. And then also regional partnerships, as I'll note in a minute. Go ahead. Yeah, there we go. So listen, we've had a chance to chat with most of you, and we'll have many more chats in the future. Economic development's kind of a funny thing. It's hard to pin down. It looks different things at different times, depending on what the opportunity or challenges of the day. Primarily, though, you can think of it as really getting to know and understand our business community's needs and opportunities, and then leveraging resources to try to meet those challenges and opportunities, whether that might be identifying necessary barriers within our own organization or bringing in outside resources and expertise to help problem solve. So again, it looks very different at any particular time. You have reviewed, no doubt, our city strategic plan. These come directly from that. And I won't belabor you with a word-by-word rendition of each one of these goals, but maybe highlight a few examples in each one of these categories of what it practically looks like with respect to economic development. I would highlight in Goal 1 on business this idea of attracting, retaining, and diversifying our business composition, and particularly jobs. We spend a fair bit of time doing recruitment and retention. Recruitment being looking for new companies or entertaining requests from new companies who are interested in Albany, helping them sort through what we have to offer in terms of land, utilities, workforce, and other support systems that are around, depending on what their needs are. Recruitment's a funny thing. It's kind of the sexy thing people focus on a lot with economic development. What's the big new project? But it's also has the lowest return for kind of your average investment. It's not something you can not do, but it does take time, and you rarely get wins. When you do, it's very exciting. And we certainly had a good one this year. And then in terms of retention, again, it's understanding what are the challenges and opportunities for current businesses to retain those jobs. Again, if you had to choose, retaining your current jobs is always a safer bet than trying to find new ones, if you had to choose. Goal number 2, partnerships. We just spend a lot of time with not only other communities in our area coordinating efforts on recruitments and workforce issues, but also with organizations like the Small Business Development Center, The Oregon Manufacturing Extension Partnership, OMEP for short. They provide technical assistance in the manufacturing space as folks are looking at setting up new production lines and that kind of thing. A few others I might note are like the Technology Association of Oregon. And I will note Oregon State University and LBCC being very key partners, not only in terms of helping to train qualified workforce, but also OSU, invests a lot of effort in trying to incubate and grow entrepreneurs and startup businesses. We spend a lot of time with those folks saying, hey, as you grow and you need space, let's help you find what you need here in Albany. So they don't leave along with their investment to Salt Lake or Boise or California or Seattle. And then lastly, I'll note in goal 4, we'll get to know each other very well, new counselors, with respect to the CARA district and your role there on that agency board. But really the purpose of that work in which we manage is to create this unique and vibrant core of our city. CARA, the district, is approaching its useful life, and it's going to go out with a bang, and excited to work with you as we finish up remaining projects in the docket for that district. I'll just highlight a couple of recent accomplishments here. I just mentioned, and Kim mentioned earlier, the waterfront redevelopment project. Again, we'll dive into that some more, but really, this has been envisioned for more than 25 years in this community. I've had the pleasure of working on it for over 4 years and trying to help you, the community, bring it to fruition. It's extremely exciting that construction will start this spring. The next point talks about a few key properties: the old St. Francis, the Wells Fargo building, the old City Hall. Again, there's nothing that I dislike more than saying, wouldn't it be great if so and such happened, or someone should make that happen. So we've set out, along with the council here, to figure out how to make those projects happen, and they're well on their way, which again have been envisioned for over 20 years. We've played a key role in the statewide semiconductor task force. If you've followed the news on that, this is a big deal for our state. The semiconductor industry plays a key role in supporting lots of other jobs around the state, whether we have a semiconductor or an Intel factory right here in Albany. And our participation on that task force, we were lucky to be invited to do that, has highlighted some key pieces of property that we have in Albany that can actually take advantage of that industry as well. We, along with the council, helped identify over $500,000 in grants that were being underutilized here at the city to go to a couple key projects that are, one's in construction and one is hoping to get kicked off soon. And I'll just note that $500,000 commitment that you, the council, made is being leveraged to $13 million. That's a 26x return. And that doesn't even count the jobs and the spending from those industries or those companies as well. That's just the investment in the actual facilities. Pretty amazing. I'll also note that along with that, we identified and applied for and got $350,000 from the state to go to a particular project, which is the Tahkeena High-Tech Manufacturing Hub. That's going to incubate up to 12 new companies at any given time in the manufacturing space as well. It's a one-of-a-kind thing in the whole valley here and highly anticipated. We also helped create and write a new, and I would argue more responsible, fiscally responsible and transparent policy around the use of our transient lodging tax dollars. As you know, Peter and his team, all of us included, take the use of public funds and the expenditure of those very seriously, and providing more transparency and responsible use of those funds was the impetus behind that new policy. So thank you for understanding that and passing that. We also hosted six new recruitments and supported the development of one new traded sector business this year that will ultimately result in 30 new jobs to our community. Lastly, let me just cover current projects and challenges a little bit. There's always a million things going on. One thing that I'm excited to work with you, new council, on is an economic development advisory committee. And we'll fill you in on that in the near future here, but this is a new thing that we're embarking on together to take folks with real understanding of economic development here in our community and utilize their input along with staffs to, first and foremost, really develop and revise an economic development strategy for the city and some work plan associated with that. And then they'll be a good sounding board, again, for us and help to kind of, I use this word leverage a lot, but we're a lean team, so we're going to use other folks here in the community to spread the gospel a little bit and provide some really valuable input for you. Because frankly, one of the big challenges, and I think probably going down to number 4, is thinking about how can we actually continue to diversify and grow our economic base. And as always, in a world of limited resources, there's going to be lots of folks tugging on our resources and saying, hey, spend money here, spend money there. Don't give it to them, give it to us. And that's a hard position for you to be in. But along with staff's expertise and this EDAC group, I think we'll be well positioned to provide you with good policy recommendations around the use of really limited funds for the best return for the community. And then I'll just note as well that lastly, two things. We are limited, right, in what we can do. All these things I've just mentioned to you are big, exciting projects, but the bread and butter of economic development is continuing to know and understand your business needs and opportunities in your community. You got to be having time to go out and visit with them. And we're always torn between that and kind of looking long-term strategy and what the next big thing is. And I'll leave it at that. I think we'll see as we work together this spring that there is quite a bit of interest in continuing to invest in our downtown core, even without the need for a TIF district, without CARA. And that's something we'll continue to maintain and grow those opportunities along with you. So I'll finish there if there's not any questions.
So what is the status of the Wells Fargo building? Is that for a later discussion?
Yeah, we'll update that you on a few more details on that in February at the ARA meeting. But
Okay.
basically, they're starting piecemealing, doing the environmental remediation on that right away.
Okay.
So.
Well, I want to thank you and Sophie for the work that you do. We talk all the time, and I know it's a challenge having such a small staff and a lot of big demands from City Council and the ARA. So I know that it's bright. I'm excited about the waterfront being started, and congratulations on the grant. And let's go.
Okay, let's go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. You're welcome. All right, so I'll be taking the rest of it. So our building division is responsible for building plan review, inspections, code compliance, ADA compliance, and some emergency response. Our mission and purpose for the building division is we operate off of a delegation of authority from the state of Oregon. That delegation is based on state building codes. If we didn't have a delegation, our citizens would have to go to either Lynn County, because they currently have delegation, or directly to the state. By having the authority to administer the state's building code results in our citizens seeing faster permit reviews and timelier inspections. So it's important for us to have that. And one of the main things to understand is it is a state building code. It's not a city building code. That's when we talk about a delegation. It is a statewide building code that we administer for them. We work collaboratively with the development community to try to facilitate prompt and accurate, hassle-free reviews. It's an evolving process. Certainly COVID taught us that. We learned a lot through COVID. So going into the building permit activity, I've got a couple slides of just kind of showing you where we're at. We average right around 3,000-ish building permits a year. That includes structural, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. A interesting note, or actually a really great note, for several years, we've been working on an online permit system, even before the COVID crisis or pandemic. And I've got some data here that shows in fiscal year 2020 and 21, 68% of the permits that were created were through ACA or Acela Citizen Access. And that's our online permit system where people can go in, they can create permits, they can pay for their permits, they can upload their documents. When permits issued, they can get that information out of there. And then you'll see in the following fiscal year, 21-22, we jumped up to 82%. I will note that in that 21-22, we were open here, where there were portions of 2021 we weren't. But to have that in place before the pandemic was
Instrumental, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not, certainly we would have figured things out, but it was so great to kind of have already had that started. Building inspection activity, so we have basically 3 building inspectors that average right around traditionally 8,000 building inspections every single year. So needless to say, they're a busy group. We saw a little bit of a downturn in building inspections for fiscal year 21-22, but that's pretty standard. For building activity on the residential side, these are just permits pulled for single dwelling units or just standard single homes. There is, while the graph shows it looks like a big fluctuation, it's really not that much. We average between 120 and 150 on most years, single dwelling unit permits issued. Same thing for commercial. We had actually a pretty big year in fiscal year 21-22, where we had close to 50 applications or permits that were created.
Wow.
I will note that on the commercial side, that includes alterations. So that could mean a new business coming into an existing structure. Anytime that happens, they're required to get a change of occupancy, so that we're looking at what their new business in and does it fit within that structure per state building code, if there's any improvements that need to be made.
So this does or does not include alterations? Because there's an asterisk that says.
It does include, does
Does not include, okay, I was just wondering, I'm like, okay.
If it did included alterations, the permit count would be much higher. Sorry about that. Kind of drilling down into some of the finer detail. I won't spend a bunch of time here. I believe you guys will probably end up getting the slide decks, but just average home size for single dwelling units over the last several years. It looks like a big sweep, but it's not much. They usually average between 1,900 and 2,100 square feet here in Albany. Residential average job value for your normal residential home. Currently, 21-22, averaging at $300,000. Now, it's important to note that that is the value based on the ICC estimated construction value. It does not include the land value. It also does not include
ICC?
International Code Council. So they dictate what the formula is we use for calculating an estimated construction cost. It doesn't include the land. It doesn't include any of the fit and finish type things that you'll think about for like a new home. So if you have granite countertops or fancy finishes, this is just basically the structure. That's why that number seems really, really low. So it's not a true representation of real market value. Commercial average job value, same type of deal. For FY 21-22, this also, again, doesn't include the land value, right around $1 million. So state of the building division, this has remained largely unchanged over the years, but we are continuing to make improvements. We typically complete all of our inspection requests within 1 day of the request. Our residential plan reviews are completed within 10 business days of submittal. We offer our customer counters are open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every single day. Again, I mentioned the ACA process or the ACA system of the Acela Citizen Access, which is our online permit system. That is 24 hours a day, 365. People can go in and create and pay for permits. We also added just this year 2 public kiosk stations that are located upstairs in front of our community development counter. Those are for folks that either don't have internet access or want to learn how to use our online permit system. We have staff that will come out and help them set up their account and learn how to do online permitting. The building division is a self-supported, dedicated revenues from our building permits. So it's not general fund supported at all. As I mentioned, we are always continuing to improve our process and our systems. Some of the small things we are working on, some of them aren't small, but implementing a new permit naming convention. So our building permits right now start with a B dash and then something. B means building permit. We're going to be adding basically a different letter at the front of that to make it easier for people to know what type of permit it is. Also, we're working with our partners in Public Works to come up with essentially a combo permit so that folks that are applying for permits, it's going to require multiple permits. from not only building division, but public works, where it could be lumped into one single permit. And then lastly, we're implementing a master plan program for new single dwelling unit permits. And essentially the master plan or repeat plan permit is if you got a builder that's building basically 4 different types of homes, they're able to submit the plan once, we review it, we keep that on our file, and when they want to build it again, they just give us an updated site plan with how it's located on there. It saves them not only time, but money as well.
Nice.
So our planning division. We do development review, floodplain management, long-range planning, which is also known as comp planning or comprehensive planning, historic preservation, code compliance, and we've got one staff that manages the CDBG program, which is the Community Development Block Grant. So our mission and purpose, again, strategic plan theme, great neighborhoods. I won't read the goals word for word, but it's important to us that we're hitting those. We implement the statewide planning goals and make sure that we're in compliance with state laws and rules. Part of that is planning for and managing growth. We work with our stakeholders in the community and identify community visions along with all of your help. And we develop codes and procedures to ensure implementation of that vision over time. One of the other things we're also always doing is trying to remove barriers while still ensuring the implementation of that vision. When I say removing barriers is we're always looking at the process to see, can we make it better? Can we make it faster? So the Oregon land use structure is unique. So the Oregon land use structure back in the 1970s, under some heavy campaigning from Governor Tom McCall, Senate Bill 100 was passed, and that is the Oregon land use structure that we know today. It's been attempted to be appealed multiple times. Those appeals have not been successful. That land use structure is unique in that it sets basically an urban growth boundary. It says around cities you have this boundary that you can't grow past that. Interesting enough, one of the quotes by former Governor John Kitzhaber was, Oregonians hate 2 things. Oregonians hate density and they hate sprawl. Well, in order to avoid
Can't have one
sprawl,
without the
you
other.
have to have density.
Yeah.
So it's those 2 things compete with each other a lot, and that's one of the challenges that we're constantly working on is in that understanding of this is you look at a urban growth boundary. I'd like to call it our sandbox, and that's kind of our sandbox to play in. We don't get to go outside of it. So you kind of have to densify in that sandbox. And the whole reason behind Senate Bill 100 was to preserve those farmlands and open spaces that are outside that we as Oregonians enjoy so much, whether we like Senate Bill 100 or not. The attempt there was trying to preserve those areas. Talked about the land use structure already, but this is when we look at how we implement that. So current planning, one of the portions of our planning division, they do the implementation of our development code. So Albany's development code and land use permitting for AKA site development. And then there is the long-range planning or comprehensive planning portion of that, which is ensuring that we're complying with legislation, new mandates, which end up in Oregon revised statutes, the Oregon or OARs or Oregon administrative rules, statewide planning goals, and then also our own comprehensive plan. And again, as I mentioned on the current planning side, we administer the development code. Typically our land use reviews are completed within 120 days. That's mandated by the state. We have weekly pre-application meetings for folks that are interested in potentially doing a development. They can submit their information and come in and meet with staff for free. And we run through what codes would be applicable and any challenges that we might see. Same as building, our customer service counter is open 8 to 5 every day. And there is also the online component for planning now as well. We generally see about 50 to 60 inquiries per week, whether that be by phone, in person, or email. We are the Current Planning is the liaison for the Planning Commission and the Landmarks Commission, which oversees development or new construction addition in our historic districts. Just some general numbers here, looking at development activity. It remains pretty steady. We run for development applications right around 130 to 140 applications a year. So state of the current planning division is we filled two current planning staff vacancy that we've had we went quite a while with those positions vacant, which was challenging. We created a planning technician role just at the very start of FY 2021. That role's really paying dividends for us. It operates like a permit tech that we use in the building division. It's really freed up time for our planners to work on planning projects. As I mentioned, the customer service portion, 8 to 5, and they're also help support with the public kiosk stations. I mentioned floodplain management. This year we were recently recertified as a Class 5 jurisdiction for Community Rating System, or CRS. That results in a 25% reduction in flood insurance rates for citizens who need to have flood insurance. I think on a total that was about $62,000 saved for our citizens here in Albany. Just by meeting the requirements to become a Class 5 jurisdiction, they get to take advantage of that by lower insurance rates. We're constantly, again, on the planning side, continuing to look at system improvements, process enhancements. We're currently in the process of refining our Type 1L application process and how we evaluate those applications, really trying to reduce the amount of staff time it takes, which will in turn reduce the time it takes to review the project and somebody's project can get started. We're also refining our internal cross-department review, so any land use application that comes in gets reviewed by Public Works, Building, Fire, so that we're coordinating those reviews. So we're kind of looking at see if there's ways that we can make that review process even better. So what's ahead for current planning? We've got an island annexation project. I'll be bringing that to all of you in the coming months. That was a project that actually council had given us the thumbs up to get started, and then COVID hit, and we made the decision that we weren't going to do it at that time. It just wasn't the right time to do it, so we paused it. I'll be coming back to council to talk about that. We're looking at doing amendments to our current, or Article 7 in our development code for the historic districts. That's an article that's been needing some updating for a number of years. Our Landmarks Commission has talked about that, and staff has talked about that, so we'll be starting work on that pretty soon. The current planning staff also assists with development code amendments as we attempt to comply with state mandates. The one that's coming up is climate-friendly, equitable communities, which you'll hear me talk a little bit more about in a moment. And then we hope to get started on a planning fee evaluation, which part of that discussion will be cost recovery on our planning fees. So long-range planning services and accomplishments. Long-range planning manages the CDBG program. We are also the liaison, or actually the person that does CDBG is also the liaison to the Community Development Commission. In in 2021, we did a development code amendment for our non-conforming situations in our development code, and that was sorely needed. There was a lot of challenges located in the old code, and there was many folks that were happy to see that updated. We also adopted Middle Housing Code that brought us into compliance with House Bill 2001 and Senate Bill 456. We started the Housing Affordability Task Force, which we use to assess strategies to include in our Housing Implementation Plan, or HIP. I will mention that the HIP project was actually, we were able to start that project through a grant through the state. You hear a lot of departments talking about grants. We also go after grants to supplement our budget. In fact, there's a lot of our projects we wouldn't, especially long-range projects, we wouldn't be able to do if it weren't for grant funding. We're also just past the some additional housing-related code amendments that had to do with the middle housing code back in December. And then as of recently, the Senate Bill 5561, $1 million that we got for affordable housing and homelessness, worked with the Community Development Commission and Council in allocation and award of those monies. So the CDBG, I can never say that, program overview. The purpose of this is to benefit low and moderate income residents and other services. It's based on our annual action plan, which is developed by staff with recommendations from the CDC and direction from City Council. And we allocate roughly $340,000 of federal funds that we receive through that CDBG program. The CDBG has certain activities that are eligible that includes property acquisition and rehab, fair housing, direct support of low-income micro-enterprise, and public facility improvements like emergency shelters and parks. 15% of those funds received is directed towards providing service for low and moderate income residents or other vulnerable populations. Yeah, historically, these funds have benefited about 2,000 to 2,500 residents annually. As I mentioned, the CDC plays a fairly significant role in that program. They help assess the community needs, help with agency consultations, public input, and solicit and award grants to area agencies. The staff's role in this is obviously a liaison to the CDC. We do all the reporting, tracking performance measure, grantee oversight, contracts, public engagement, grant management, and then compliance with all the federal regulations. And that is one staff that is 0.8 FTE, so they're not full-time. They are very busy. Additional plans for this year, we're due for our 5-year strategic plan, and also we'll be looking at the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice and plan. So long-range current projects. So our housing implementation plan, that's what I mentioned with our Housing Affordability Task Force, is going to be coming to an end soon. We're looking at public hearings and adoption in May and June of this year. That implementation, once the plan's adopted, will occur over the next year with comprehensive plan and development code amendments, as well as council policies. So the East I-5 area plan, or East Albany plan, that we've been working on from some time, it's also nearing its completion with public hearings anticipated for March and April. And again, we'll have implementation to include amendments to the comp plan and map, as well as zoning map and development code amendments that you guys will end up seeing. And then the next big project is our climate-friendly equitable communities project, or compliance project, or CFEC as we're starting to call it. First step in that is going to be parking reform. We'll have updated parking requirements and parking lot standards that we'll have to make some decisions on and implemented by June 30th. You'll see me on February 13th at a joint session with Planning Commission to talk about kind of the first step in that. Excuse me. And then in 2023, or this year, we'll be looking at identifying potential climate-friendly areas, and that's done through consultants that have been provided by the state. So they're helping us with that. And then in 2024, we'll be preparing plan and code updates to create those CFAs. So what's ahead for long-range planning? So our projects and challenges, obviously, as I just mentioned, the CFEC, that's going to be a multi-departmental, complex, and comprehensive project. Require updates and amendments to multiple standards, multiple codes. Our comprehensive plan, it is a major lift for us. And Ann Catlin, who does our long-range planning, is she's a lifesaver. So she is very, very busy. HIP implementation, again, that affects, there'll be multiple code changes and numerous policy changes as well. Needed housing, our lack of housing diversity and lack of funding to support all the needed housing types, affordable, accessible, home ownership models, et cetera. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. And then with the updated city strategic plan, we'll be implementing that in community development. And part of that will include significant updates and improvements to refresh our comprehensive plan, which has been largely untouched since 1982 when it was created. It's had a few updates here and there, but it needs a major overhaul. And then we would like to update our department website as well. So again, on what's ahead, I mentioned housing. One of the things is a homelessness action plan is needed. We'll be working with council, which was going to involve more than just community development. So multiple departments, counties, local agencies, with the goal to develop a plan prioritizing needs and determining how to allocate what's anticipated state funding that's going to be coming through. In a homelessness action plan, I just want to be clear, it's a citywide plan. I'm not suggesting that that lives in community development. Peter and I we haven't had a chance to kind of discuss what this looks like yet. So, but chances are it will take a dedicated FTE to do that. And then just had some stats to kind of share at the end here. As far as homelessness goes, the 2022 point in time survey, there's 197 people unofficially in the portion of Lynn County that are homeless. From GAPS is 309 students fiscal year to date that don't have a place to call home. And that can be, their parents are unhoused or they're living in other places. The 2020, sorry, I don't mean to end the thing on a kind of a sad note, but the 2021 poverty level is $12,880. City of Albany has almost 6,000 people at that poverty level. And we have almost 16,000 people at just right at 2 times that poverty level, so $26,000. So you think about a city with a population of almost 60,000 people, a third of our citizens are either at poverty level or just 2 times that. It's, yeah. And the 2021 housing burden, 7,700 households are in less than 50,000. Of these, 5,700 spent more than their 30% on housing costs, which 30% is that kind of maximum that you should be shooting for, excuse me. Section 8 vouchers. I won't go into great detail onto this, but the key number is there on the right. 981 households receive vouchers, 795 are on the waiting list. So big numbers. And this slide did not get updated, but we just showed this was the stuff on the right didn't need to be there again, but this was really meant to indicate residential housing permits by type, primarily single family detached or single unit detached units. We've started to see more apartments come in, but as far as housing options, we're about 70% of our housing is single dwelling units. So my last slide, other than questions, but this kind of ties it all together and kind of where we're headed. Currently, as of July 1 of 2022, the PSU population estimate is about just a touch over 57,000. Historically, our projections or our population has outpaced the PSU projections by about 1%. So you expand that over another 30 or 40 years, you see a PSU projection in 2067 of almost 92,000. The historic or maybe more realistic number, 120. So these are challenges that we have to, as community development and as a community and as the council, that we have to figure out solutions of where do people go. So with that,
Can you say a word about business registration? Would you like to say that?
I'm going to say that. With that, I will I'll answer any questions you might have or attempt to.
Council? Councilor Novak, you have any questions? So Director Rutgers, do you foresee any more state funding for, like we just went through the 5561 money to help with the homeless piece?
There is, it was just announced, there's likely to be more monies coming. Ann will know more about that. She hears about it before I do, actually. But as we get those monies or hear those monies are coming, we'll be back before council and the CDC to talk about what the next steps are. But there is more money coming, as we're being told. So.
I just want to make a quick comment about Ann Catlin and Beth Freelander. They do tremendous work. They keep the CDC, Community Development Commission on task. I know it's a hard job, having 9 different personalities to work with and massage and manage to accomplish a goal of dispersing, and I hate the CDBG or Charlie Delta Bravo Golf monies to the different organizations, but without them, it'd be a cluster that would be a mess. And so thank you, Ann, for keeping us on point. And thank you, Beth, also for making sure that the administrative stuff is done. I know Caitlin just joined us, but over the last 2 years, if it wasn't for their guidance and their support of the commission, we couldn't have got anything done. And so I do appreciate your continued service and work in support of the commission. And I'm looking forward, going forward with the housing implementation plan and also the homeless implementation plan going forward. And I can't tell you how valuable you have been to me as the mayor and the city councilor, and your guidance and your education. So thank you. Thank you, Director. Yes, Marilyn. Councilor Smith.
The resident historian here has to throw this in. I just wanted to remind people or inform you for the first time, if you're new to Oregon, and that's new since 1973, that Senate Bill 100 started here with Oregon Senator Hector McPherson from Oakville. So we have him to thank for helping save farm and forest land and making us beat dance.
Is that a backhanded compliment?
It's wonderful. I've enjoyed throwing that around as I've traveled around the country over the last 20 years or so to other states where they don't have land use planning like we have. They have sprawl. They have strip malls that go from one end of the state to the other, and we don't. And we have, as much as we may not like density, it could be so much worse. And we have a beautiful state because of Senator McPherson and the 1973 Oregon legislature.
There is some documentary history about how Lincoln City came about with 5 communities that all came together. That is sprawl, which helped prompt that whole process.
I did have something, sorry. I did want to express appreciation to your staff. My time on the Planning Commission was amazing. They were always very helpful in answering my questions, and I just always felt very supported in that, and I appreciate that they're there to answer all those questions that for some really technical packets that come through. So thank you for that. Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mayor, I
Director.
think you inserted a bio break in this part of the schedule because you knew we had a real long public works presentation
Yep.
coming up.
So let's come back at 45, 7 minutes. Let's come back at 5:45. Thank you. Waiting for one city councilor. Councilor Novak, are you with us?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. We're waiting for Councilor Newton to get back, but I don't want to hold the director up any longer than we need to.
That's right.
But she's brand new city councilor, so you're going to have to wait.
It's all right.
Let's go ahead and get started. She can catch up with you.
Okay. There's
It is-
nothing important at the beginning anyway.
Okay.
It is recorded too, so.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Bailey. I'm the Public Works Director, and this is the overview of the Public Works Department. First, I'd like to introduce the key leaders in Public Works that are sitting in the back. We have Stacy Belcastro, who is the city engineer. Kristen Preston is operations manager, and Jeff Babbitt, who is our senior accountant / business manager.
Where's Jeff Babbitt? Never met him before. Hi, Jeff.
Yeah. You'll hear from Stacy and Kristen occasionally through the year as they have items to present on. Jeff, you'll only see rarely. He's an accountant, so he doesn't like public speaking. In a lot of ways, Public Works is different from most other city departments. For instance, a lot of the departments you've heard from already are almost or entirely dependent on general fund funding. Public Works is not. 99.5% of our budget comes from sources other than the general fund. So we do have our own challenges, which you'll hear about a lot. Not so much tonight as over the coming months. But we don't depend on property taxes or other source of general fund revenue. That's a common misperception I'd like to clarify right off the top. And because we generate most of our own revenue, that's one of the main reasons why we have Jeff Babbitt. Our budget is large and complex, as you will see. In addition to having the largest budget in the city, Public Works also has the largest number of employees, and we are responsible for the widest variety of services. I watched the presentations yesterday and today. A lot of people gave you a lot of metrics from their individual departments. I don't have time to give you metrics, so I'm sorry. We're going to talk in a broad overview.
Thank you.
But if I did give you metrics, we would be here for hours, which I would really enjoy, but you guys probably not so much. I could talk about Public Works forever. It's fascinating. Each of the utilities in Public Works is essentially its own department, and we just don't have time to go over all of that detail. So even with that, I'm going to use up all of my time. I'm sure this is always the longest department. Sometimes we get to go first and get it out of the way, but this city manager likes to put us last, and that's okay.
Thank you, Peter.
We're going to end on a good note. Okay. I started working in Public Works in my 30s, and before I got here, I had no idea what infrastructure was and didn't really give it a thought at all. So some of you are probably in the same boat, so I thought I would start with a definition of what is Public Works. This quote comes from the American Public Works Association. Public Works is the combination of physical assets, management practices, policies, and personnel necessary for government to provide and sustain structures and services essential to the welfare and acceptable quality of life for its citizens. So what that means in various cities depends. Albany is essentially a full-service public works department. We do all of the traditional public works services except for solid waste. So I'm going to tell you what it looks like in Albany, but it will look like different things in different cities. So you already know about the strategic plan. It has 4 themes. Public Works supports all 4 themes through our 4 major service areas of transportation, wastewater, drinking water, and stormwater. The department is organized with a director and 4 primary divisions. Engineering is under the direction of Stacy Belcastro, who is the city engineer. Operations is our largest section, and Kristen Preston leads that group. The administration group is headed by Kendra Coggins, and finally, our financial group led by Jeff Babbitt. Altogether, we have 133 FTE in the department, that doesn't include seasonal or temporary staff. And we're going to go into each of these things in more detail. So I'll start with transportation. We provide a range of transportation services where we plan for, operate, and maintain the city's transportation network. We do routine things like pothole repairs and crack sealing, but we also provide maintenance of every single street sign in the city and the city-owned traffic signals. We also have 3 public transit programs, and we manage the municipal airport. In wastewater, we provide treatment of the residential, industrial, and commercial customers' wastewater at the Water Reclamation Facility, also known as the WRF and referred to as the wastewater treatment plant. It's all the same place. We also inspect, clean, and maintain the collection system. We perform routine and preventive maintenance at sewer lift stations and the WRF. We manage Talking Water Gardens, which is our constructed wetland facility. And we do all of this to maintain compliance with federal and state regulations. I'll mention here that the WRF and Talking Water Gardens are jointly owned by the City of Albany and City of Millersburg, and we work closely with Millersburg on those facilities. Drinking water, we make clean drinking water at 2 treatment plants. We operate and maintain the distribution system, including reservoirs, water pump stations, hydrants, valves, and thousands of other small pieces of equipment. We plan for and perform routine and preventive maintenance on all of our infrastructure. We operate and manage the Santiam Albany Canal, including a diversion dam and all of the flow control structures on the canal. We operate the small hydropower generator at the Vine Street Water Treatment Plant. And similarly to wastewater, we jointly own the Albany-Millersburg Water Treatment Plant, which is the new plant, with the City of Millersburg. I'll also mention that we have intergovernmental agreements with Millersburg. The City of Albany provides water distribution maintenance and wastewater collection system maintenance for the City of Millersburg on a contract basis. And we also maintain their infrastructure mapping in our GIS system. Oh, it says stormwater at the top. This is actually stormwater, not drinking water services. We would not have skunks in our drinking water pipes. I just want that to get out there right now. In stormwater services, we inspect, clean, and assess our storm inlets, pipes, culverts, and ditches. We inspect and maintain hundreds of stormwater quality facilities. These are the vegetated facilities. You probably see them next to some of the newer road projects. They're stormwater infiltration facilities. There's hundreds of those in town now. We respond to spills and reports of contamination in either the storm system or the local waterways, make sure those get cleaned up. Most of that work is required to maintain compliance with the MS4 Stormwater Discharge Permit. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, and it's a category of facilities and activities that are regulated by the Federal Clean Water Act. So we have an MS4 permit. We have tons of things we're required to do under the permit, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And just a quick note, unlike wastewater, there's no centralized treatment of stormwater. We do have those infiltration areas and water quality facilities that provide some level of natural treatment, but most stormwater goes directly from the street to the river. And I forgot to say it, but please stop me anytime if you have questions. In engineering, we have an engineering group responsible for providing the planning, design, inspection, and construction management over all of that stuff I just mentioned. It's a small group, but they determine our infrastructure needs for the community as it develops, looking out often on 20, 30, or 50-year timelines. They ensure new assets and projects are constructed according to engineering standards and designs. They either design themselves or manage the design of capital projects. They manage construction, and they issue permits such as encroachment permits. On the engineering team, we have trained construction inspectors, construction managers, engineering associates, and civil engineers. Our staff also works with professional engineering consultants when needed, and they issue and manage those professional service agreements. And finally, we have several work groups that work across all of our utilities that we call internal services. These include utility billing staff, accounting staff, admin and contracting. We have computerized maintenance management system, or CMMS staff. They maintain asset data on all of our assets in a software program called Cartograph. We have automation and control staff that do our SCADA work for us. That has to do with programming and automation of many of our facilities. We have a small group of mechanics, and then we have some water quality staff as well. Okay, I hope that you can recognize that this is a map of a chunk of Albany. The Willamette River is kind of right in the middle of the screen. It probably looks different than what you're used to seeing on Google Maps. It is in color, so for those that are colorblind, there are lines that are blue, green, pink, orange, and black. Each of those lines represents pipes that Public Works is responsible for. And in addition, what you can't see here, there are thousands of other pieces of equipment and facilities that we track, manage, maintain, fix, replace all the time. So the point of this slide is just to make you aware that there is a lot going on in Albany all the time, probably most than anybody is aware of. And when you talk to somebody in Public Works about the intersection of this street and that street, this is what we're thinking about. Like, what does the water system look like there? What does the sewer system look like there? And it's a lot more complicated than probably most people think about.
So, Director, thank you for putting that up there. When I first got elected to City Council in 2019, you presented a slide that had the number of miles of 4 or 5 sewer pipe.
Of the condition of pipe?
Right. Where are we sitting right now?
Oh, man.
I have to ask. I mean,
I don't know if Kristen can help me answer this. We are going to give the utility rate presentation in early March, and so we'll have that information for you. I think right now, somebody's shouting. So Kristen says we have 24 miles approximately of pipe that is rated a 4 or a 5. And so
4 or 5 is not good.
Yeah, so we use a pipe condition rating system. It's a national system. It goes from 1, which is great, brand new, all the way up to 5. And it actually is like a 4-digit code. And so it goes 5, 1, all the way up to 9. And then it starts with letters. And so we used to have like some 5Z pipes, which are really, really bad. And we did targeted investments in those pipes. And so 24 miles is not great, but we're probably down 2/3 from where we were. I'm trying to picture the graph. We'll talk about that more in the utility rate section. So,
thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to read this slide to you. But you can look at it. There's lots and lots of good bar trivia on here. Well, I'll just mention a few things. We literally treat billions of gallons of water and wastewater every year. We have 200 centerline miles of roads, which translates to over 400 miles of asphalt road, because a centerline typically has at least 2 lanes. We have over 600 miles of underground pipe, which if you laid them end to end would stretch from here to Calgary. We drive thousands of miles every year. We have some people that drive all day, every day. We have other people that just drive to and from projects. So things like cost of fuel, cost of tires, cost of replacement vehicles, those things are very important to us. And finally, just to point out the cost to maintain these systems in capital projects, we spend between $10 and $12 million on capital projects every year on average.
So currently, what is your department's biggest pain point as far as the water infrastructure?
Oh, I'm going to get to that. But stormwater, but we'll get to that. So continuing on with budgets, we have this current fiscal year, our budget is almost $102 million, which is about 48% of the total city budget. So Public Works hovers in this 45 to 50% of the total city budget every year. Within the budget, the department budget, are several funds, which are represented in that center rectangle, including some enterprise funds. Enterprise funds are unique and have their own requirements. For instance, an enterprise fund has to generate the revenue it needs to support itself. And enterprise fund revenue can only be spent on the activity within that enterprise, with a few very small exceptions. So for instance, because it's an enterprise fund, water revenue can generally only be spent on water activities. You can't take water revenue and fix a street. On the right-hand side, I've tried to depict that within each fund are various funding sources. So I have two examples here. The sewer fund on the top receives revenue from service charges, system development charges, or SDCs, and then other smaller sources such as connection charges. While the street fund, which is down below, receives revenue from state gas tax, Surface Transportation Program block grant funds, SDCs, and others. So there's a similar level of complexity for all of our funds: water, transit, airport, et cetera.
So does you don't receive any of the city services fee?
We do not receive any city services fee revenue. You're really doing good at segues, Mayor. So our sources of revenue are primarily utility rates, system development charges, are sort of routine sources of revenue. Utility rates are charges for service. Those are water, sewer, and stormwater charges. They can generally be used to pay for any kind of expense, operating capital or debt. System development charges an extremely simple explanation of SDCs is that they pay for the impact of new growth and development on the city's infrastructure. So establishing and using SDCs is defined by law, and the city has a website, a page on the website that has a good description of SDCs. If you'd like more information, you can go there and search, and pretty good description on the website. We use debt funding in the Public Works Department. Debt is typically loans or bonds. We don't have any bond debt right now. We have used bonds in the past for large street projects, for example. We do have debt for loans in both the water and sewer fund. State or federal funds, examples would be the state gas tax, the STP funding, which is for major street projects, and as well as we received CARES and ARPA funding this year, which came from the federal government. We do use grant funding. Grants, we have both ongoing operational grants and then one-time sort of project-specific grants. Grants always have a local match. I shouldn't say always. During COVID times, some of our grants went to 100% funded, which was nice. But grants almost always have a local match or an in-kind contribution, and they always come with strings and requirements attached. They are a large part of the funding mechanism for transit and the airport. As far as expenditures, we generally think of first we pay off our debt. That's our first obligation for all of our funding. Then we fund operations, and then with whatever's left over, we put money in capital projects. Not every fund would have all three of those types of expenses, and where any given revenue dollar can be spent often depends on where it comes from. Hopefully you've gotten that message. We have tons of rules and limitations on spending. For instance, state gas tax revenue can only be spent to maintain existing road infrastructure, not build new roads. And money gathered by water rates or SDCs can only be spent within the water fund. Even with all of that, we have way more need than we have funding available. One way we manage this imbalance is through the Capital Improvement Program, or CIP. The CIP is updated annually, and it describes the plan for capital improvements across the city for the next 5 years. So the CIP addresses the entire city, not just Public Works. Every CIP document includes a list of unfunded projects in every section. The CIP is being developed right now. We should have the draft out for you in a few weeks. And I encourage you to, when you review the draft CIP, to flip through and look at some of the unfunded needs sections, because it'll give you a good idea of the magnitude of known and unfunded need. It doesn't include the unknown and unfunded need, which is also out there, but we don't know what that is. When you have more need than you have resources for, you have to prioritize your spending, of course. It's true for all of us. And one of the ways we do this is by working with the council to define a level of service. For instance, you might hear us come to a council meeting sometime in the future and say, what level of street condition do you want us to target? And we'll discuss that, and you'll decide, and you'll tell us, we want you to target a certain level of street condition, and then we'll go off and figure out how much is it going to cost us to maintain that level of service for streets. And that will help us define how and where we spend our limited resources. Our department, like all of the city, operates with no margin. So a decision to increase the level of service in one area will almost necessarily mean a cut in another area unless you identify additional sources of revenue. So if you ask us to go, for instance, create a sidewalk repair program in streets, we currently don't fund sidewalk repairs across the city, then we will come back to you and say, we can fund sidewalk repairs, but then we will stop doing X, Y, and Z so we can pay for that. So these are the kinds of trade-offs and balances that we'll talk with you soon, especially in streets. Paying for capital needs is a combination of pay-as-you-go and debt financing. For relatively small capital projects and facilities capital projects, we usually are able to pay for that from funds we collect ourselves, or we can phase work, which helps us. And in the water and sewer funds, we set annual capital funding targets as part of our rate analysis every year, which we'll be discussing with you again soon. Larger projects require outside funding, such as bonds or loans, and we always discuss those with council, and sometimes those have to go to a vote before we can embark down that path. Okay. Peter asked us to list accomplishments. So the Public Works Department does an outstanding job just accomplishing their daily tasks. So if you turned on your tap today and had water, we were successful. But I'll highlight a few sort of extra accomplishments that came in the last couple of years. First is the wet weather lift station. This is not glamorous or sexy, but it's critical. So this project was funded with a loan of about $11 million in Clean Water State Revolving Funds. And it's a sewer lift station down on Water Avenue near Montgomery Street. And it's only active during moderate to heavy winter flows. And this has prevented sanitary sewer overflows to the Willamette River for sure. We haven't had any overflows since it was installed and put into action. So it's protecting the river and helping us maintain compliance with our permits. Huge, great project. Next, also in sewer, we have the composting system. We installed new dewatering equipment and made significant associated improvements with that, which the neighbors, I am sure, have noticed a significant decrease in odors around the wastewater treatment plant. And we also installed equipment to begin composting some of our wastewater solids. So we're spending less money hauling solids to the landfill, and we're creating a product that has a beneficial use and can be used as compost anywhere. We continue to invest in a strategic energy management program. Veteran council members is what I'll call you, might remember multiple energy projects that we brought and talked about with the council where we received rebates back from the Energy Trust. So we continue to do that work, and we expect to budget less for electricity in the next biennium than we did in this current biennium, which is a direct result of that work. Transit is doing good things. We've recently doubled the Lynn Benton Loop service that provides public transportation back and forth to Corvallis. We're about to expand ATS for the first time in probably 30 years. Transit users in Albany are typically in the low to very low income brackets, and they depend on transit. So these should be meaningful improvements that help them get where they need to go faster and more reliably.
They're still free, right?
It's still free, and we'll be coming back to talk to, it's not free.
I mean, as far as the,
Us, people that have to figure it out. Yes, it's fairless, but it's not free.
okay,
Yeah, we'll be coming back to talk to you about fares.
okay.
We're also in the middle of an engineering design for a new transit operations facility. Chief Wooten mentioned this the other day. This will be the first ever dedicated bus facility for the city. It's been in the strategic plan since before I was hired, which is a long time. So when it's built, we will finally have storage for the buses under cover, and we'll have a workspace for our employees that actually has heat and running water. The fire department will then be able to take over the space we currently occupy behind Station 12. The LED streetlight project is underway. It should be getting pretty close to being wrapping up. So Pacific Power is replacing all of the streetlight bulbs in town with LED fixtures. It saves electricity. We've charged a lower rate per pole, which is how we pay for streetlights. And they produce, in my opinion, a better quality light, which improves pedestrian and traffic safety. We should save over $100,000 a year with that switch. And another major accomplishment, which I'll throw in as an example of large work effort that sometimes falls out of the sky and hits you in the head, is the absorption of the Dumbeck Lane Water District. So Dumbeck Lane was a small water district in Benton County outside the city limits of North Albany, and it was a wholesale customer from Albany. So we sold them water and they paid us a wholesale rate, and then they managed their customers. As a special utility district, they had their own governing body and all of the things that go along with being a small municipality. They were not able to find 5 people in the district that wanted to be on the board. So they had to dissolve their district, and we had to figure out what to do with them. So we worked with Benton County and the state of Oregon to work through that process and take those customers on as direct water customers. That was a ton of work, just in case you wanted to know. Okay, looking outwards at trends on the horizon. So like everybody else, we have workforce challenges. That drum has been beaten, so I won't focus on it too much. But I will say that LBCC used to have a great program in water wastewater technology that they've ended. And we got so many water, wastewater treatment operators and field staff from that program. So now trying to find brand new water people or wastewater people with 2-year degrees is really hard in the state of Oregon.
Chris, if that was such a successful program for us, what was the reasoning why they canceled it? Because you were able to take almost all of their graduates.
Yeah, we take 1 or 2 graduates a year because nobody leaves Albany because it's a great place to work. But their graduates found work easily. I think they had low enrollment is ultimately why they canceled the program. We are working. It's an identified need in the water and wastewater sector to find trained staff, and so we are talking with some of our peers about what can we do, or are there ways that we can try to figure out how to get more people interested in water and wastewater work. Let's see. The other thing I'll say is that, like many people, departments you've heard from, a lot of our professional positions are underpaid when compared to our peers or in the private sector. And the pandemic created this sort of upward pressure on wages that we're trying to deal with like everybody else. Infrastructure, we don't have enough money to pay for all of the needs in our infrastructure. In particular, street maintenance is inadequate, and you'll be hearing about that from us soon. We're going to restart the discussion on how to pay for streets in Albany. Those assets, like most of our assets, tend to fail on a curve, so the longer you delay, the worse the condition is and the more it costs to fix. So we've got to figure that out. Public Works is highly regulated. Drinking water is regulated through the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act and then through the state Oregon Health Authority. Wastewater and stormwater are Federal Clean Water Act programs, and then through DEQ. And I'll go through some of the acronyms that we have to deal with on the canal. Drinking Water Program, DEQ, State Historic Preservation Office, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Division of State Lands, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, National Marine Fisheries Service, and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And that's not a complete list. So working in Public Works, you are always talking with federal and state regulators, and all of those regulations are tightening. Even street signs are regulated, believe it or not, and we have a little tool to help us meet retroreflectivity standards. So most of the stormwater work that came out of the permit is kicking off, and I'll talk about that more in a minute, but that's sort of a known quantity, but we always have emerging contaminants that are coming down the pike as well. As for opportunities, energy management, we're doing great things. We're trying to be very efficient, and that's a source of some opportunities for us. We have the IIJA or BIL, same law, the federal infrastructure law, which was a major significant investment in public infrastructure. And we are working to identify programs we can qualify for and apply for funding. Most of that funding is not given to us. We have to identify projects and compete for those funds. And most of those funds are still in the form of loans. So there's still a debt component associated with that. And then the new compost product, which again, I hope you'll be hearing more about, that's a real opportunity for us to take what has been a waste and turn it into a beneficial product. So that's going to be good stuff. Okay. Trends of the next biennium. Funding, everybody talks about funding. What I'll say in answer to your question, Mayor, is the water and sewer funds, I will say, are stable right now. As long as we continue to make necessary sort of incremental investments in the rates and keep up with inflation, and there's not a major disaster, water and sewer are probably in okay shape. Stormwater, we're continuing to raise rates for Stormwater Fund. It's a pretty new fund. The demand for work in stormwater has taken off. We knew this would happen, and here's my analogy. It's like you're on a sledding hill, and you're on your sled, and you're sort of scooching towards the edge of the hill. That's what we've been doing, and like in the last year or so, we went over the edge of the hill, and we're gaining speed. So we're going to have to add staff in the next biennium. We're going to have to add equipment, and we're going to have to raise the funds to pay for all of that. In streets, again, street condition is getting worse. There's available funding for capital projects, but it's nowhere close to what we need, and there is no funding for local streets. So we have to figure out what to do with streets in Albany, and we'll be coming to talk to you about that within the next few months. And then on transit, it's exciting to be able to expand our transit program, and Matthew talked about CFEC, which is Climate Friendly Equitable Communities. That legislation and a lot of the legislation around transportation relies on public transportation to help solve transportation issues. So while we're doing great things in transit, the demand on transit is just going to continue to grow. And then last, we have litigation. Sean Kidd is going to be giving an update on litigation, but
Next month.
it never ends. So that's it. Hopefully, you can now tell people what Public Works is. I can talk about anything in there for hours. So if you have questions, feel free to ask. And also, if you want to get together for coffee and talk about Public Works or something, I'm happy to do that anytime. So if you have any questions,
Council, Councilor Kopczynski.
Director, can you boil that down to 15 seconds so I can talk to a constituent who's upset about their streets? No, thank you.
Tell them to stay tuned because we're going to be having some conversations about streets. Yeah, there's not a silver bullet for streets.
You have any questions, Jack? Councilor Montague?
Yeah, and it's kind of a silly question, but I've always wanted to know since I moved to Albany. My parents lived in North Albany, and I drove by the turtle crossing sign very often. whose job is it to switch it from not turtle crossing season to turtle crossing season? Because it's got to be your staff, right? Is that
Yes.
somebody in your staff that does that?
Yeah, I think those signs have been taken down though.
Oh, okay.
But yes, that was our staff.
There was, yeah.
Really?
And that was done, I think it was a partnership with one of the watershed councils. Kristen might know more. There are sensitive and listed species of turtles in Albany. And Thornton Lakes, where that sign is a good nesting habitat for them. And so that's why those signs were put up.
Yeah, I was always curious.
Yeah.
Who did that? And
That's
who
us.
determined what?
I think we
it
had a
was turtle
schedule. It was like a
season?
work order task, and the
Yeah.
street guy would be like, ugh, and he'd go out and flip the sign and
Well,
come back and
I'm
flip
sure
it
the
again.
turtles appreciate it, but
Yeah.
I always wanted to know. That's your staff. Okay.
Yep.
Anything, Counselor?
The duck signs are still on Washington Street, aren't they?
I
Or
think
are they-
so. I
yeah.
think there's some near Grand Prairie Park.
New
as
Grand
well.
Prairie Park, I assume there.
Yep.
I think I have you all beat, though. We have a pig crossing one on 4th and Walnut.
Okay, I don't think that's an official.
It's
city
not
sign.
official, I don't think.
Okay,
I think a
good.
neighbor put it up.
Yeah, no.
Counselor Novak, do you have anything for the director?
No, I'll just say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question, airport.
Yes.
I'm probably gonna get hit for this. Is it generating any revenue for the city? Any substantial revenue?
So the airport fund is designed to be self-supporting.
Is it?
It is. It receives no funding from the general fund or any other source. So the airport generates revenue through, we get a percentage of fuel sales, we lease land for hangars, those sorts of things. We lease some of our own buildings. And it has a reserve. So all of that on the operational side is adequate to keep the airport going.
For how long?
Well, that's a good question. I'll have to look at the current year. So we're eating into our reserve a little bit every year. I think in the current year, because we got some ARPA and CARES funding that came directly to the airport through the federal transportation bill. So I think that I don't think we're going to eat into our revenue in the current fiscal year at all. Our reserve revenue, I should say. So, it depends. We'll have to calculate. We have multiple years before it gets serious enough that we're coming to the council going, you guys have to help us figure out a way to continue to fund the airport.
So a question I have, I get from my constituents all over the city. How many people benefit directly from that airport?
Oh, that's a loaded question also.
I mean, because is it 100? Is it 200?
Well, what I can tell you is I think we have, I think a little more than 200 leased hangar spaces between public and private buildings, and not all of those are City of Albany residents.
Okay.
The airport does attract individuals and groups that will fly in and come and go, have breakfast and do things. So it's not a business airport. We don't have that sort of traffic, but I think we have an interesting proposal for the airport that I think will help in the near term if this, we'll be talking to the council about it if it sort of gets a little more fleshed out. But it's not, the airport is what it is. It's not going to get bigger unless aircraft technology improves. We're not going to get business jets or those types of things in there. We can probably do more to try to attract helicopters and other types of uses that would fit within our constrained runway. But, as far as how many people in the city does it benefit, that's a very tough question to answer because you're getting into economic development, which is clearly not mine.
So I'll be asking this economic development manager about that. The reason I brought it up is because how many acres is approximately the airport?
183, I think, something like that.
So if there's 200, so less than 200 people are benefiting from 180 acres when we have a housing shortage?
Mayor, the answer to that question also has to consider emergency purposes, emergency response purposes too. So the airport does have a role in that regard. Now, how many people would benefit from that? That depends on the assumptions that you make. If you're using that to bring in supplies after the big earthquake has happened, then potentially quite a few people. But that's, again, dependent upon your assumptions.
I would just like to see a plan to either monetize it more or where it benefits more people in the city of Albany. I think it's been sitting there as a hobby airport. It's a historical hangar there it is decreasing in value. It is falling apart. And, you know, I've asked this question since I was elected to city council in 2019. I just want to know, what can we do to that airport to make more sense for the city of Albany and the residents that live here? And I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying that.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's very subjective. And, you know, there are people that use the airport. They're very passionate about the airport.
Well, trust me, I know.
And then there's a whole lot of, you know, considerations from a staff perspective of, you know, changing the use of that land. That would be a huge, huge effort. But, you know, if the question is, can we do more to try to make the airport make more revenue? Yes, but that revenue will stay with the airport.
Well, that's fine. It's just, I'd like to see that airport be more for the city of Albany.
Sure.
Whether it be increasing tourism, you know, providing rental cars so
Yeah.
people fly in, they go have breakfast. Because right now they're not doing that. People land, they get an Uber or, you know, or a friend picks them up. But I'd like to see people on the coast or spend, you know, fly their Cessna in, have a rental car or transportation to the local mall to buy our stuff and then take off and go somewhere else. 2021, we had Amelia Earhart's birthday at the airport on the runway, and it was wonderful. People flew in from all over the United States. I think the furthest away was Alabama. I presented a book to her, signed it and everything, and we had cake and food. But that was a good use because they came into town and they spent money, they enjoyed the city of Albany, and they flew out. We need to figure out better ways to use the airport, maybe partner with parks and kind of figure out some kind of things to do with that. Other than that, I'm good.
Companion question.
Yes.
If the use of that land changed from an airport to a housing tract, for example, would we be under any obligation to repay the federal grants that we've received
Oh, yeah.
to keep it going
Yeah.
for the last umpteen years?
Yeah, so yes is the answer to your question. And I actually tried to get some details on that question, that concept. Yes, we would have to pay back to the federal government the depreciated value of what we got from those grants. So the runway, for instance, was redone.
How long ago was that?
2011, somewhere in there. It's 10 years old, I think. But there's lots of obligations. So the land was purchased by the city of Albany. It was not purchased with federal funds, so it's Albany's land. There's also, it's a historic district, so there's complications with that.
It's the hangar that's historic, though, right?
It's the hangar. There are 4 identifying features: the big historic hangar, the beacon tower, which is next to it, the bird hangar, which is a small maintenance hangar, and the crosswind runway, which you can't see anymore, but you can see evidence of from historic photos. So there are 4 identifying features. Those would have to be dealt with. And then typically the FAA doesn't like to close airports. You have to get their permission to close your airport. And so there would be a long process with the FAA to figure out what to do with that. It's not impossible, from what I'm told, but we would have to hire a full-time person to try to manage that process if we were going to do that. It would be a significant investment on the city's part to do that, so it wouldn't be easy.
Something like trying to decommission a hydro turbine on a canal.
That would be easier. Yeah.
Thank you, Director. Any other comments, questions, councilors? I guess not. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, before you leave, I want to thank Kristen and you. Last November, there's somebody called me and said, I think somebody dumped a bunch of oil in this.
Sure.
And I sent Director Bailey some videos and a little comment I was talking about, because this was close to a culvert. And the next day, Kristen responded and it was handled. And that was fantastic. And so I appreciate both of you for responding so fast and getting it done and protecting that waterway.
Sure. No
Thank you
problem.
very much.
Thank you.
Okay, my agenda tells me I'm supposed to be talking to the city manager for closing comments.
That is it, Mayor. You've heard from all. And what you, hopefully you got quite a bit out of it. What you didn't hear from Chris right now is any reference to her deputy city manager duties.
Oh,
But as you all know, she agreed to take on some of those duties on a temporary basis, and I'm very grateful and happy that she's accepted the responsibility. So you asked me to say a few words about Deputy City Manager. Jorge Salinas' departure 2 years ago left the position of Deputy City Manager open. In those 2 years, our city has continued to grow, and our operations have become more complex, as you've heard tonight. But we've lacked the bandwidth to execute some important functions. And at some point in the future, the city will need to establish a deputy city manager position, which will provide us with that capability, with the leadership and responsibility for specific projects and citywide initiatives, such as sustainability, the Americans with Disabilities Act, which right now the librarian handles, energy stewardship, DEI coordination, and the list go on and on. We'll also help the city manager in administrative management and strategic leadership, and I think specifically of driving the strategic planning process and the performance management process that needs to accompany the strategic plan. It will also apply or provide the ability for an enhanced ability for community outreach programs and management of institutional change in the organization, as well as advocacy with our state and federal legislative contingents for grants and other legislative priorities, some of which you'll see, Mayor and Councilor Smith, tomorrow as we go and try to advocate at the legislature, as well as a role in grant writing. Because as we talked about earlier with finance, grant writing and grant administration go hand in hand. Potential assistance with labor negotiations, that was something that Jorge helped with. That's not necessarily a determined function of a deputy city manager, but it's possible. And then, as I've mentioned to you before, it'll provide the bench strength to address succession planning concerns at the executive level. I tell you that I'm haunted by the idea that somehow if I stepped off the curb and got hit, that you wouldn't then have anybody to step in right away. So we'll undertake the establishment of this position in mid-2024, and you'll hear more about it. So if you have no questions on that, I want to thank you again for your attention and your thoughtful questions tonight, and remind you that you're welcome to submit more questions anytime, and we will answer them as quickly and to the best of our ability as we can. And many thanks to Will Summers and Terry Vernig. Terry, who stuck it out tonight on behalf of the Budget Committee for attending these sessions, and to any other members of the Budget Committee who may have attended virtually. At least those who watched remotely were free to get up and stretch their legs or get a drink. The link to the slides that you've seen tonight, if you are interested in going back to them, will be available tomorrow, as well as the video from these two meetings on the normal place on the city's website. And I hope we've succeeded in providing a comprehensive organizational overview, and that you're leaving this evening with an awareness of some of the significant accomplishments of the tumultuous last several years. And I also hope we've increased your appreciation for the environment in which we'll be operating in the next few years and the challenges we'll be facing. You've undoubtedly picked up on some common themes: recruiting and hiring. Succession planning is still an important function. Councilor Kopczynski remembers that the council told me when they hired me that it was important to them, succession planning, and it still is. Chief Wooten, Allison Lease, pending retirement, 16 police officers in 1 year, 26 HR recruitments, as you heard. The turnover in personnel is heavy, and while it brings new blood and allows those who've worked long and hard to enjoy some deserved retirement, it does bring its own costs. Challenges in recruitment and retention make succession planning even more important. The unfunded mandates is another theme that you might have heard, but they're only one of the many factors that increase the costs of our logistics, our central services. There are the security concerns you heard about, inflationary increases in insurance contracts, increases in contract management requirements, a transition to new systems, and again, the list goes on. And the concepts of risk management and opportunity costs are important, and they run throughout these presentations, even if you might not have noticed them. You might not have noticed them expressed in that way. In this world of limited resources, the ability to manage risks, which are inevitably there, is essential. And opportunity costs, which, as you know, are what it costs to not do something in terms of lost opportunities, they have an impact. They're important. These challenges will face all of us in this community. Other organizations and businesses tell similar stories, but I would say let's not lose sight of the fact that although there are lots of challenges ahead, we're fortunate to live in the city and to share in the blessings of this our community and our beautiful environment. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to serve this team and you as city manager. So thanks again for your attention tonight. And again, please direct any questions that arise from this evening our way. Thank you.
And with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for attending tonight.